Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and this is Shelby Reads, where we talk about sapphic books all year round. Okay. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm a femme for butch lesbian who came out in 2013, which was a long time ago. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel and you'll never miss any updates. Today we're going to be talking about Her Mortal Champion by Luna Lawson. It is book 1 in the Fae Champions series. This is an adult romantasy that came out in 2024. We're back with some romantasy, folks. Here is the synopsis of the book. All I'd wanted was to get laid after winning a tournament. How had I managed to screw that up? Giselle Raynor isn't just a normal chick with a boring job, but that's not true. She usually has a boring job, but when the leaves start to change and autumn takes hold, she becomes a knight. Sure, a Renaissance fair knight, but a knight just the same. But every tournament has a familiar routine. Fight a few mock battles, win some sparring challenges, and then make out with a pretty tavern wench before stumbling home and falling into bed. But this tournament is different. This time, everything is going right. When Giselle emerges from the final bout of the tournament as the Queen's champion, a beautiful woman insists on buying her a drink at the tavern. They share rounds of mead and a passionate kiss, but the mysterious woman isn't just cosplaying as a Fae princess. She is one. Stolen away to another realm, Giselle has been chosen to serve as the champion of a princess who is desperate to defend her claim to a throne that should never have been hers, and to the princess who kidnapped her. Bound by Fae magic, Giselle will be forced to adapt to a strange world full of deceit, political intrigue, and more than one murder. Will her skills be enough to help her survive in this kingdom of eternal autumn, or will she be trapped there forever? Before we get started, I like to provide trigger warnings and disclaimers. You know how we roll here. So the trigger warnings are provided by Storygraph, and they are also provided by me. Suicide, murder, sexual content, trafficking, kidnapping, alcohol, blood, death, injury/injury detail, misogyny, sexism, violence, xenophobia. I will add more if necessary tomorrow. I like to do a good comb through, but the only two on Storygraph are suicide and murder, so that's not really helpful. Okay, so my disclaimers. This review is not for stans or fans of this author's work. This review is specifically for other readers so that we can have a silly, goofy time and I can be angry on the internet. This review will contain all of the spoilers. You have been warned. I am not bashing sapphic books. I think we deserve varying qualities of sapphic books, but I'm allowed to talk about the books I read on my channel, just like straight and bisexual people are allowed to also. Just because I didn't like this book doesn't mean you won't. If it sounds like it's for you, give it a try. Like, you never know. You might enjoy it. This book is by an indie author. We should still support indie authors. Again, if you think you would like this book, go ahead, give it a try. I don't see why not. But my indie recommendation for today is Thornfruit by Felicia Davin. I will warn you that in the sequel books after the first one, it becomes polyamorous, which is why I didn't finish the series. But the book itself was very good and sapphic, and I gave this book 5 out of 5, but I read it back in 2021, so hopefully it still holds up as a recommendation. It's been a long time. Now, let's get started. Chapter 1, Branthe. Yeah, that's the name. Sure is. We start with Branthe, our Fae lead, running through the woods away from her pursuers. I bolted through the tangle of the forest, lost. I knew these woods by heart. I had played here as a child, and these shaded walks and gentle paths had been my solace. But now I was hunted, and the frantic beat of my heart threatened to choke the air from my lungs and force me to my knees in the eternally falling leaves. The palace lay behind me, but I didn't dare look at the way the narthex spires glowed in the fading light. So I will say that I didn't actually hate this book immediately, which is kind of the case for a lot of these. But as we go through the word choices, I will say that some things are repeated to death. I will go over it as we go through it, but it gets really obnoxious. She's running through the woods like... She briefly wonders if she should pick up the shreds of her dress that are kind of creating a breadcrumb trail behind her. But like most of this book, she doesn't really think too hard about it, and she chooses to scram before they can find her. She gets to the sacred pool, which has no like direct path, and she's never found it the same way twice. It feels like the whispering woods from She-Ra that like move, you know? But she knows that the ancient trees led her here today, and there's no other explanation. There can't be another explanation in your magical Fae world. really? The veil between worlds was thin here, and my magic was at its strongest while surrounded by these trees. Magic tied to the land itself. I'm glad the magic is a little more coherent in this one than the last romantasy we did, but it's still not the best magic system I've ever read, but it also could be so much worse, you know? We learn that she's the princess of the Autumn Court. Again, synopsis. Hello. And she's worried about leaving her realm, but she can't return until she has a champion. And the shouts in the woods are getting louder. So she says an incantation over the pool, and she quickly feels that there's something wrong with the spell, but it's too late, and the darkness of her spell washes over her. She falls forward into the pool and gets pulled through the pool to our world, you know, Earth. It's not a pleasant process, but I feel like we go through multiple of these pool situations, so I don't really want to bore all of you and repeat it over and over because we're gonna keep going over it. She is fascinated by everything being green because it's eternal autumn in her home, hence the name, but she gets horrified very quickly that there is no magic here. A dead land. There were stories about it, myths and tales meant to warn Fae children away from the portals that were available to us. Being trapped in a dead land, no matter how beautiful, I leaned against the tree and blinked away the sharpness of my tears. But if I couldn't escape this place, was that better? Surely they wouldn't chase me to this place. But even though this is a dead land, she can still faintly feel her magic. And I just feel that this defeats the purpose of making this a dead land. It feels like...
You guys probably fuck girls in juvie.
No, we were lying about that, obviously.
About juvie?
Yeah, I mean,
Why
what?
would you lie to me?
But she's just in luck because she somehow appeared right where there's a Ren fair. How lucky! She can hear the ringing of the steel. She starts passing through the crowd with people who are dressed similarly to her, but she figures out they're humans. An unbreakable spell binds her to the Autumn Court very quickly. Like, I don't really understand how she knew they were humans. Unclear, but her magic has brought her here and she has to figure out why. I know it's the fantasy part of the romantasy, but I hate when magic is always doing all of the heavy lifting narratively. Like, why can't you ever just end up somewhere just because? Why does it have to be the magic propelling you? She hears a guy announce that they are about to start the first of 5 battles for the title of the Queen's Champion. His words resonated with an authority that seemed almost regal, and I could not help but smile to see these humans performing such earnest acts of theater. So here she says she knows that this is theater, but it will become clear that she doesn't really think this. It's frustrating as hell, honestly. Someone comes up to her and tells her that they love her ears and asks if she's a makeup artist because they're so seamless because she has the pointy ears. She has to think on the fly and she says, no, I was just lucky. The girl asks for a picture with her and Branthe doesn't know what this is, but they take one with her anyway. And I did find this part a little funny, like a smidge. And I do love when characters from other worlds are confused about a new place that they're at, you know? I think of like Starfire from Teen Titans. After the photo, she is ready to see Sir Raynor versus Sir Harcourt. Sir Raynor catches her eye because her sigil is a golden lily pierced by a black sword, and her own sigil from back home is a red lily which is poisonous in her realm. But Branthe decides she's gonna help Sir Raynor by cheating. She whispers a little spell in her ancient tongue, and I don't really understand this because wouldn't you want to see who is the best naturally? We get an explanation, but it's not very satisfying in my opinion. Even though she's helping Giselle cheat, she thinks this was no mere performance, this was the heart of a true champion beating against the odds. As far as the other main character knows, sure, but you're helping Sir Raynor cheat. So I don't know how you can call this a true champion when you're not letting it play out naturally. We end the chapter with her certain that Sir Raynor is the champion she desperately needs. Chapter 2, Giselle. We are with our knight, Giselle, and she's currently fighting Sir Harcourt, and she's thinking that he is an asshole, and he's always been an asshole. And she thinks that he pulled her name on purpose. I had beaten him 5 times in practice, and I knew he was mad about it. I could feel it in his strikes. Insecure men be like that. Sir Harcourt is taunting her as they're fighting. If you want to play-by-play read the book, I'm not going to try and describe sword moves that I don't get. I will now turn the mic over to Gideon Nav, who will tell you if this is realistic. Damn, she's usually a lot more talkative. We learn that he and his friends bet on these fights, and they all bet on Giselle losing the match. The spectators watching had no idea how much this fight meant for me. How could they? Even my opponent couldn't understand it, but I didn't expect him to understand anything. Why would the audience care how much this means to you? I don't understand why we do this kind of shit in books. They're here for a Ren fair. Your wants and goals don't matter to a bunch of randos. Sir Harcourt, otherwise known as his first name, Liam, is trying to actually hurt her because he's an insecure man baby.
You're insecure. You're insecure, you're insecure, you're insecure.
She's doing all right through the match, but she hears a sultry voice telling her how to move. And without hesitation, she does whatever it says. I don't understand this kind of shit because I would start freaking out. And she doesn't think it's her subconscious. She thinks it's someone helping her. And she's not worried about cheating at all. The hell? She asks who the voice is in her head, like, who are you? But she just keeps doing what the voice is telling her to do, and she knocks him down and demands he yield, and there's some back and forth about him being louder before he does it. It's then announced by the herald that she won, and she's made it into the semifinals. She starts across the field, and her fellow fighters and some squires offer her congratulations. She now actually ponders what the voice was and wonders if she needs to be seen in the medical tent to have herself, looked over. But she sees in the sea of faces, out of the corner of my eye, amidst the sea of faces, I caught a glimpse of an ethereal figure, an enigmatic woman whose beauty seemed to blur the lines between human and fae. So the amount of times ethereal and enigmatic are used in this book is insane, and it felt obnoxious. So ethereal by itself is used 10 times, and enigmatic is used 5 different times. I just feel like we could have used a thesaurus a little bit, it doesn't sound that much together, but if I've noticed it that much, maybe it's a problem. As you could probably guess, she's seen Bronte, but she vanishes when Giselle blinks. Giselle and one of her friends, who is unnamed, have a little banter, but she's stuck on the woman who may or may not have been a figment of her imagination, her adrenaline-filled imagination. Chapter 3, Giselle. People are telling Giselle that she needs to get drinks with them, but she can't because she has to fight again. But she says, but you should buy Liam a cup of ale, to take his mind off of his defeat. I don't know. He seems like the type that would be a mean drunk to me. I wouldn't recommend that. We learned that she was close to winning the competition last year, but she was knocked out in the semifinals. As the Queen's champion, I wouldn't have to fight with the rabble for recognition anymore. I would only have one battle with the final night to defend my title. So do you not actually like sword fighting? Isn't the whole point to actually fight each other? She thinks about Sir Jerome, the current champion, who's held it for the last 5 years, but she thinks he's getting old and lazy. He also plays the villain and really plays to the crowd, and he's not in it for the prizes, he's just in it for fun. She wishes she could be more like him, but not today, and I think he personally sounds fun. I love a good show. Something in her tent catches her eye, so of course she goes to see what it is because it's I too am like a crow, and I also love shiny things. It's a beautiful sword, unlike anything Giselle has ever handled before, and when she picks up this sword, it feels perfect. It had taken me months to get used to holding my sword, but this sword seemed more familiar to me than anything I had ever wielded. Giselle's unnamed squire says it's time for the semi-final and asks where she got the sword. She says she's just trying something new, and he tells her they have to hurry because they're ready to go, so they go head off back to the tournament grounds. We find out that the winner of the last bout, who she should be fighting in the semi-final, has a fractured rib, and he has conceded the match to Giselle. So they are skipping to the final round against Jerome, and Giselle cannot believe it.
Believe it! Believe it! Believe it! Believe it!
Lord Roderick, aka Jerome, approacheth. He says he didn't expect to see her on the field, and he can tell she's not ready, and she knows that he knows and thinks shit. And the match is announced. She's worried because he doesn't go easy and he doesn't let his opponents beg for mercy, and he broke someone's leg a few years ago and then knocked that guy unconscious. He takes a big gulp of ale before he gets ready to go. He's kind of iconic. He tells her not to make it too easy for him as she's trying to dodge, and that all these people want a show. Again, I kind of love him. He's not in this book long enough for my taste. But while this fight is a bit hard, the sword is guiding her movements. Again, at what point is this cheating? I know we're already been there with the like whispering in her head, but at what point are we not counting this as a victory? You know? She has the thought that this is about proving she belongs here. But if you're doing it with a magical sword, how are you proving you belong here? But in case you guys got bored from pages and pages of sword fighting, a wild fae appears. There she was again, that strangely beautiful woman, her haunting eyes fixed on me. She leaned nonchalantly against the fence, a silent spectator amidst the fervor. Her presence was a siren's call that lured my attention away from the steel clashing against steel. Yet even with my focus momentarily fractured, my body knew the rhythm of battle well. I mean, she's this hot, I guess, if you say so. Maybe I just haven't been around enough butches, but there's no one I've seen in the flesh where I've been unable to focus on something I'm doing because they're so hot. There's some attempt to get her focus back on the fight by Jerome because he's here to give everyone a show, damn it. She knows he won't yield to her, so she has to defeat him without any room for question. Except then on the next page, she gets him to yield, so that wasn't true, was it?
I mean,
Why would you lie to me?
The audience erupts in thunderous applause, and she's the new Queen's champion, huzzah! But she's not thinking about beating Jerome, she's thinking about the haunting eyes of the mysterious woman from the crowd. Insta-love / insta-attraction are diseases. I would also like to mention that haunting or hauntingly is used multiple times also. The herald comes up to her and says, sorry I didn't bet on you, and that you have some time to get cleaned up and changed out of your armor, and someone will come get you for the Queen's declaration. She's awkward and tells him that's some great heralding. Her squire comes back up to her, and some other guy tries to get out of her who she got the new sword from, and she's stalling and lying, and her squire tells the other guy to leave her alone, but no one expected that she would win, and she suddenly doesn't feel so bad about not learning the squire's name. I will say that many of the characters aren't named, at least in the beginning, and I don't know if I like it or not. We literally just did a book where there were too many named characters. But her squire is going to come back and get her in a bit. She then starts speaking to the sword, asking where it came from, but it obviously doesn't answer her. It doesn't matter though, because Branthe is here to congratulate her, and thankfully Giselle recognizes her voice from being inside her head immediately. Branthe asks if she wants to get a drink, and Giselle wants to do that immediately, and she wonders if her pale violet eyes are contacts, and if she should ask about those. Chapter 4, Giselle. As if in a trance, Giselle is following Branthe to get drinks. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The thrill of victory still coursed through me, the bewilderment at this enchanting woman's sudden appearance, and a sense of foreboding that lingered at the edge of my consciousness. Despite it all, there was an undeniable pull drawing me closer to her. I would have been blind not to be attracted to her, blind and deaf and everything else. I'm really sick of this instant shit. Like, nothing has to be worked for or developed if you just have them be into each other immediately. I'm just so sick of reading the same things over and over. Like, where is the pining? Where is the yearning? You know? They go to the tavern tent, which is busy. The tavern tent was busy, but all I could focus on was the woman beside me and the way her presence set my senses on fire. Again, I can understand that some people can be hopelessly attracted to someone at first glance. It happens to me on TikTok all the time, but we are adults and I don't understand why we're unable to control our own minds at least a little bit. I know that Branthe is magical and that's part of what the draw is, but I still find this whole thing annoying. There's an attempt at flirting with Branthe, telling her she could have her choice of drinking companion tonight. Giselle says, I'm a bit more popular today thanks to the tournament. different, but none of them caught my eye quite like you did. And Bronte asks if she has competition, and Giselle says, who can compete with you? Who could compete with you? I quipped back, a hint of flirtation sneaking into my tone. Despite the blood and grime on my face, there was an undeniable magnetism between us. Just because it's undeniable doesn't mean it's indescribable. It's your job as an author to convince me, but books don't bother to do that most of the time anymore. I'm finding we're just supposed to take your word for it. They sit at a table and Bronte compliments her swordsmanship. I'd role-played my way into more than a few beds since I'd started training with the night school. If she wasn't going to drop her character, then neither was I. If I'd known it was this easy to score Ren Fair chicks, I would have started sword fighting right after high school. It would have saved me a lot of grief in college. See, I did like this part because Giselle thinks that they're just role-playing, and it's when we get out of this section that the book kind of starts to go downhill. They get some beer. Bronte asks her what she thinks about when she's facing off with an opponent, and Giselle tells her that she's hoping not to trip over her own feet, but it is like a dance. But Bronte really wants to know what drives her, and Giselle thinks about it and she tells her justice, a good cause, a fair fight. Those things matter to me. Giselle thinks to ask Bronte who she is. Maybe, I replied, but who are you, my lady? I still do not know your name, ... And a good knight should know the name of every beautiful woman in this kingdom. She tilted her head, studying me with a hint of amusement in her strange eyes. I am Bronte, she said, with a slight bow of her head, princess of the autumn court. Giselle laughs and says, a princess, and here I thought I would have more time to practice my courtly manners. See, if you thought this was just a fun roleplay, I can understand why Giselle isn't asking certain questions, you know? Giselle tries to tell her that she has to go get ready for the Ren Fair thing, but instead this happens. Our lips met, and it wasn't just a kiss, it was the collision of two worlds, fervent and consuming. Her mouth moved against mine with a gentle urgency, and my lips opened against hers. The raw desire between us was electric, sizzling through every nerve in my body like wildfire. I could taste the ale on her breath, intermingling with the heady scent of autumn leaves and wildflowers that seemed to emanate from her very skin. Her fingers tangled in the loose strands of my hair, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss until there was no air, only the shared pulse of our heartbeats. Our first kiss, only 12% into the book. I am so tired of this. So bone tired. It's hard to be an enemies to lovers connoisseur right now. They stop kissing, but Giselle feels really funny and wonders if it's her head injury or if she just overindulged even though she only had one beer. And Bronte starts leading her into the woods. And I did actually like this. I love the fae or other mythical creatures leading people to their deaths, actually spiriting someone away. Now I kind of want a book where the siren is a butch. Someone write that for me, please. Bronte asks if Giselle will be her champion and says she needs someone of valor to defend her claim against those who would see her fail. And Giselle thinks this. I chuckled, still half convinced this was all a part of an elaborate role-playing seduction. You have my sword, princess, I replied. I pulled my hand from hers and executed as courtly a bow as I could muster. I dedicate my honor and my life to your purpose and your throne. I'm just glad that we have someone who kind of thinks like a normal person. I completely understand why she kind of just thinks this is a crazy roleplay. Bronte leads Giselle to a lake, and Giselle says she didn't know it was here, and Bronte says that very few do, and is it not beautiful, ... Not as beautiful as you. She smiled as though she had heard my thoughts. You two just met. I really, really hate this shit. You don't have to hate it, but I do. But I do. Bronte gets in the water and tells her to come with her, but Giselle hesitates. Bronte says that her armor will not rust, at least not tonight. But Giselle is so curious, so she just lets Bronte draw her into the lake. I've done some crazy things over the years to get a girl to kiss me, but nothing like this. Again, at least she's relatable. Then Bronte starts saying words in her language, and Giselle starts to get freaked out and asks, what are you saying? And she thinks she sees some glowing, but she chalks that up to being a trick of the light. And now the lake is pulling her downward, and Giselle starts to panic. Again, at least I relate to her in some ways. I don't have to. Sometimes it's nice as a treat. Chapter 5, Bronte. Bronte is now cradling Giselle at the shore of the lake, but on the other side, the autumn court side. And she doesn't want to think about what would have happened if her spell didn't work. I mean, I kind of wish we had thought about it a little. I kind of want to know the options, but it worked And they're here. And Bronte has also been bitten by the insta-love bug. When will we get this epidemic under control? She was so much more than any Fae Knight I had ever encountered. Her strength was not only in her arm, but in her soul. These mortals were ... so strange, so unique. It kind of feels really weird. It almost feels like she's fetishizing Giselle a little, but we won't stretch it quite that far. I'm not a big fan of whatever this is, but it's fine. Giselle wakes up and is disoriented, and Bronte tries to shush her, and Giselle asks who she is, and Bronte says, I already told you, I'm Bronte Fallon, Princess of the Autumn Court, and now you're in the borders of my realm, which is hidden from mortals, save for a chosen few. And Giselle is gobsmacked and asks if she hit her head, and Bronte is like, no, don't you remember? And Giselle remembers Bronte pulled her into the water and says as much. You said that you would be my champion, I spoke softly, hoping to soothe her. You swore your sword and your life to my cause. What? Giselle's squawk of disbelief echoed through the trees, and I heard the flap of wings as birds were scared into flight at her cry. I thought it was just ... it was just ... pretend. Role-playing. I thought you kissed me. I couldn't stop my smile. You thought I was looking for a tumble in the woods with a valiant knight, I said. Giselle's cheeks flushed angrily and she glared back at me. You tricked me. You lied. I didn't, I replied. I kissed you and I think you're very beautiful, but I didn't lie to you. I mean, you did lie. You just lied by omission. You left things out that would change the outcome, so you did lie. And now you're just lying about lying. Bronte compliments her swordsmanship again and says the copper pathway has led you here not by mere chance, but by necessity. And Giselle says bullshit. Exactly. I'm with Giselle. Bronte reveals that her brother, Prince Cristar, was murdered, and the court is in disarray. And there are those who want the throne to fall into unworthy hands, and you pledged yourself to me. Giselle says, you're kidding, and Bronte says, I'm not. And your skills with the blade are real. Without you, the Autumn Court might fall into darkness. Giselle says that she doesn't believe it, and Bronte lore drops that there is a dark glow that can consume all that is good and just. And if you refuse or we fail, this will fuck up the Fae and mortal realm. So this kind of feels like the all-consuming darkness from the Neverending Story. So I don't know. Giselle asks a great question about how she knows Bronte is one of the right hands for the throne because she kidnapped her. Bronte says that she came willingly, and if she had refused, the magic wouldn't have brought her here. And she brings up how if she was back at the fair, she would be drinking with mortals who laugh at Giselle behind her back and think she doesn't deserve her honors. And it's clearly really manipulative BS. And Giselle says, you don't know that. And you're the voice in my head, and the sword isn't mine either. I didn't win those bouts. You orchestrated them. My spells are nothing without will, I said. If you had resisted or refused me, nothing would have happened. You might have won, you might have been defeated, but you didn't. And you won. I still think this is high-key cheating. I feel like when my brother would cheat at a board game and then lie about cheating even though we all knew that he cheated, like, that's what this feels like. Why are you gaslighting us right now? Giselle demands that Bronte send her home. Send me home. She choked out. I cannot, liar. I shrugged. You made an oath which I accepted. You are bound to this realm until I release you from it. Then release me, she cried. Help me defend my claim to the throne, I insisted. Then I will release you and you can return to your mortal realm and the life you've left behind. Ooh, she really trapped you here, girl. Giselle asks what she has to do to defend her claim to the throne, and Bronte tells her she needs to stand by her and fight against those who threaten her rightful rule. That's vague as fuck. Giselle says, fine, I'll do it, but when we're done, you'll release me and send me home, swear it. And they handshake on it. And now they must return to the palace, and they're going to give Giselle a bath and some new armor. Giselle is not happy about the new armor because her armor cost a lot of money. Bronte doesn't care though. She wants her champion dressed properly. Bronte is living the life because the guards who were chasing her are not doing that now that she has Giselle. Everyone is looking at them curiously. She didn't smell like us. Her difference was stark and obvious, and they didn't know how to react. Enough with the smells. I am so sick of these smells in books. And if they had just committed and made it ABO like they so clearly want it to be, I wouldn't care, because surprisingly, I don't hate ABO at all. They get inside and Giselle is following her half-step a step behind. Okay, Gideon Nav, move over. The courtiers are whispering and Giselle is uneasy. Bronte tells her not to worry about them, they can't harm you. Giselle says, easy for you to say, you belong here. But Bronte doesn't feel like she belongs here anymore. Dun dun dun. She thinks that since her brother's death, it's been difficult to trust anyone. Yeah, an assassination does put a damper on things, yeah. They go toward Bronte's chambers and they hear a noise down the hall. Giselle immediately is in defensive mode with her sword and asks who goes there, and she jumps in front of Bronte to protect her. But it's this courtier named Errol K. Bella. He has slicked back white hair and gray eyes, and I could only picture Draco Malfoy, and I promise you that it was entirely against my will. Fuck those books for real. But I would also like to bring up that at this point in the book I knew more about his appearance than I knew about the appearances of the leads. Like, I need to know at least a small amount of information about what your characters look like. Bronte introduces Giselle to Errol. Giselle doesn't trust him immediately. Bronte tells her that she can relax because Errol is an ally and she's safe. But Errol looks interested in Giselle, and an unfamiliar sting flared within me, the seed of jealousy taking root. Well, I'm so sick of Insta Love. I'm gonna play my jam that I did in a different video. I'm so sick of that Insta Love. That shit, it tears me up. Sick of it. Stop it. We learn from Bronte's thoughts that Errol is a necessary ally, but his intentions are unpredictable. Errol tells her that her aunt is looking for her and she'll be glad to know that she's safe. Bronte asks him to call upon their friends. She will need their counsel tomorrow morning. He says, of course, Princess bows, and then continues down the hall. Giselle asks if he's an ally. Bronte says, sometimes. Giselle asks if it's always this intense, and Bronte says only recently, and they're going to get Giselle some sleep, food, and a bath. They're now at her private chambers, and she talks to the guard. Send for food and washing water. I snapped at him as I pressed my hand against the carved wooden door and unlocked it with a push of my magic. Why are you snapping at the help? No wonder you're worried people are gonna kill you. And then they go in. Giselle is astounded by the beauty of the room. It's just a room, I say, though the sight of Giselle's awe made me see it anew. I'd grown up amongst such grandeur, and I had become blind to its beauty. It's more than that, Giselle said softly, her fingers trailing over the back of a velvet upholstered chair. I feel like royalty doesn't actually get blind to the shit, they just redecorate. Hot take. She shows Giselle the map of the kingdom and where they are now, and says they don't have much time because of her brother's death. Giselle asks what their first move will be, and they're going to try to garner support. I will just say they don't really try to do that, just so you're aware. Also, like in the synopsis when they were talking about Giselle's job, do I know what her regular job is? No. We then get a rundown of the politics of the Autumn Court. Some support the crown, but they don't care who wears it, and some will just go whichever way the wind blows. And then there's Errol. But the real goal is to unmask whoever killed her brother, because without justice, her claim is precarious. Giselle says you need someone to blame, which is real as fuck. Bronte explains that she needs her because she needs someone who isn't burdened by history and family ties or expectation. Giselle wants to know when they start because she wants to get the hell out of here. There's a knock at the door and Giselle is again high alert, but it's a maid asking about the food and bathwater. But don't worry, Bronte is rude to her too. And the servant runs away to get all of that started, and servants start bringing up steaming jugs of water for the bath. Bronte stares at Giselle and checks her out and wants to run her hands through Giselle's mud-streaked golden waves. Ew. Oh. And she thinks perhaps by the morning Giselle will forgive her for kidnapping her. Sure. Chapter 6, Giselle. Giselle tried to stay awake, but she couldn't. She's very worried about the myths of the Fae and like Fae food trapping you in the Fae realm. Again, I'm glad she's thinking about these basic things. A lot of protagonists in these books I've read specifically for this channel are stupid as all get out. And if you don't believe me, watch my Cursed by Malignant Magic video. But she can't not eat, so she did eat the food. But she's awake again after she had fallen asleep. Hooray! And Bronte isn't there with her. She looks out the window and there are courtiers who are just roaming around. And she ends up getting some breakfast from the table and the best pastry she's ever had. But it's not all bliss because she just remembered her apartment and her car and everything she left at the Ren Fair. And she thinks she needs to get out of here. It was bigger than my apartment, that was for sure. Shit. My apartment, my car, my everything that I'd left behind at the Ren Fair. Shit. spell like that. Frustration tore through me and I started to pace the stone floor in front of the windows. I needed to get out of here. I needed to get back to reality. I needed to get back to paying bills and working a job I hated. Fuck. Honestly, I feel that, and if this happened to me, but the princess was Butch, obviously, and I was allowed to bring my dogs, I think I would just stay there at this point. Giselle looks at the clothes laid out for her and hopes they're not a dress, but they're not. We love a long-haired Butch. I don't know if she's actually a Butch, but I'm just trying to get through this. But everything fits perfectly. Despite this unexpected comfort, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't hard to see the enchanting beauty of this place disguised a darkness that whispered in the rustling of the leaves and the faint echo of hushed voices. Hi, you don't need to explain all that to me. You could have just showed me. You could have just showed me instead, and I could have gotten the vibe. Giselle leaves the room and she's thinking about how she could have gotten into this damn mess. It's because you were horny. I hope this helps. Bronte sees her and says, "Oh my god, you're awake finally." And Giselle was asleep for 4 days, and Giselle is very worried about this, and she remembers all of the stories about trusting Faye. Bronte says, "Look, your wounds are all healed now." And today they are going to be going to the market together. They briefly talk about the clothes and how Giselle needs a new sword because Bronte wants her to pick her own. She tugged me forward and I allowed her to pull me along. The touch of her hand and the closeness of her body was intoxicating, but I knew that I should be on guard. I was supposed to be her protector. You can do this. Focus. You want to go home, don't you? I wish if they were going to go this route that it felt more ominous, like The House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I think it would have been more interesting and there would have been less insta-love, or at least an interesting insta-love relationship where it's not all that it appears to be on the surface. Bronte decides to ask her why she decided to go by Sir Raynor instead of Lady Raynor. The men would fight me differently if they knew I wasn't one of the boys and I hated it. They'd go easy on me or they'd try harder to hurt me. So it was easier to hide behind Sir Raynor and actually get the training I deserved. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm not," I replied honestly. I like the look on their faces when I take off my helmet and they know they were beaten by a woman. And the little girls watching in the crowd, they always cheer the loudest. "That does sound wonderful," Bronte laughed. "You'll find good company here. Some of our fiercest warriors are women." Giselle was fighting and then being like,
I am no man.
also please kind of remember about the woman warriors so we can think about it later. Okay? Giselle asks while they walk why Bronte can't be her own champion, and Bronte says it's because she chose a different path than her brother. And don't worry, Errol is back. Bronte grabs Giselle and Giselle describes it as a subtle claim.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm so sick of this. There's an attempt at banter, and Errol says with this murder we all have to be on guard. And they say some leaf metaphor shit, but it's so transparent. It's a transparent sheet that we used when we used to use that school projector. Okay, completely transparent. Once he leaves, they talk about how he's cunning. Giselle asks if she trusts him again, and Bronte says that trust is a precarious thing, and Errol plays his own game. They make their way through the market to get the sword, and they see one and it has an ethereal glow. And Bronte says, "That one was made for you." And when Giselle picks it up, it feels like an extension of herself, except she said something very similar about the last sword, honestly. Bronte says, "It's yours. Can you feel it?"
Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs? Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs? Art thou feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
And we end the chapter with Giselle thinking she's never felt more like herself. Chapter 7, Giselle. We keep thinking about how the sword is perfect. Do you guys think that maybe the sword is perfect? Giselle is out practicing with the damn sword, but Errol is here to crash the party, and he says the weapon agrees with you. I feel like he's too slimy to be actually evil, but I guess we'll all see. "What do you want?" I snapped. His brow rose in amusement. "I have never seen a mortal wield one of our weapons," he mused. "Are you certain that your blood is entirely pure?" What the actual fuck? Like, what a weird way to phrase all that. He says he means no offense. It was just an observation. And also for my sanity, I choose to picture him as a Starian from Baldur's Gate. Giselle asks what he wants again. And he says he's looking for the princess, and he asks her to tell the princess that the princess's cousin, Perron Quinnell, is looking for an audience. Giselle says that she will pass it along. Errol says that Perron has been rather active lately with shadowy meetings and consultations with figures best left unnamed. And Giselle thinks, I fought the urge to roll my eyes. This was starting to sound like a murder mystery dinner theater production.
You're going to dinner theater, aren't you?
No! What do you mean? What? That's crazy. Fine, Bob, you got me.
I do like Giselle keeping it real. And then with some cryptic ass message, Errol leaves. Giselle goes back to the palace and she starts thinking Bronte's name super hard to see if the whole like projecting each other's thoughts to one another works in reverse. And it does. Bronte is naked in bed and clutches a sheet to herself. And Giselle worries about filthy thoughts being sent over to Bronte. She tells Bronte where she's been and about the message from Errol. Her pale violet eyes held mine with unwavering strength and I swallowed thickly. It'd be so easy to kiss her, to touch her, to rip that sheet away from her body and drag my fingers down her flesh. Stop it.
My God, pull yourself together!
You have much bigger problems. Why are you like this? Bronte tells her to be careful around Errol, and Giselle asks again if he can be trusted, and we go over Errol's whole thing again. I didn't forget in a couple of chapters that he's only out for himself. I don't need you to hold my hand. This is so frustrating to me because the first few chapters felt promising to me. I was enjoying it for a hot minute. We learn about Perrin. He is power hungry, the only contender for the crown. He's very ambitious and he is suspected of her brother's murder, but only by her. We learn about Lurie, who is a maid that her brother was sleeping with, and Bronte had warned him about her, even though it's not uncommon for royals to sleep with servants. But Giselle is getting excited in her head because technically she's Bronte's servant now. Girl, eyes on the prize, not on the tits and ass. Okay? But they want to question Lurie, but if it is Perrin, he will stop at nothing. Bronte's vulnerability beneath her regal facade tugged at something deep within me, igniting a fierce protectiveness. You just met her. What? She says she won't let anything happen to Bronte, and Bronte says, I know you won't. She said, you're my champion after all, and if anything happens to me, you'll be trapped here. Yeah, that's the woman you keep fantasizing about. Giselle says she'll leave her to change, and because she heard Bronte's thoughts, she's trying to figure out how she's going to get out of this, and that Bronte has an agenda that she can't decipher. Near the end of the chapter, she thinks that if this was a hallucination from a head injury, she was going to be pissed. Real as fuck. And we end the chapter with her convincing herself this is real, but that something wasn't right. Chapter 8. Bronte. We learn from Bronte that Giselle's oath has to be fulfilled or one of them will die. Yikes. Her oath would be fulfilled or one of us would die. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. As I dressed, I could feel Giselle's frustration, her confusion. I wondered briefly if she knew that I could hear her thoughts. A small smile crossed my face as I replayed the images that had flickered in her mind as she had entered the chamber. How much she wanted me, what she wanted to do to me, ... I wanted it too. No one would bat an eye if I were to take my champion as my lover, but the fact that she was a human, that might cause some tongues to wag. It's dangerous enough to have her here. Is this just a dark romance? Is this just a dark romance skinned as a romantasy? I don't know. And she thinks about how she'll let her go if she succeeds, but will she be able to part with her? Again, it feels very dark romancy. Check out my Cursed Slumber review. It just feels very similar in some areas. She's very worried about what will happen if she does get the crown, and she's afraid of the serpents closing in. They have a meeting to attend. It's with Countess Mardove. Giselle asks if she's an ally and Bronte says she doesn't know. Bronte briefly thinks about that thing with her cousin and thinks that if he was being genuine, he could have come to her directly, but this is also something that Giselle had already pointed out last chapter. They get to the place and Countess Mardove greets her and says she arrived just in time for the council meeting, and she also throws some shade by saying, it's been quite some time since you graced us with your royal presence. Bronte says that there are matters that need their attention. She thinks about how her brother didn't request or require her presence at these meetings, and she thinks about what the Countess has been planning since her brother's death. Lord Threeval breaks the silence and asks about the mortal she has brought along with her. Bronte says that she's her champion, yada yada. He pushes back because she's picked someone unconventional. Because, I said, turning to address the entire council, she's bound to me by a powerful spell when that intertwines our fates. As you can see from the weapon at her hip, a fey-wrought blade has accepted her as its master. Would you deny the power of such a connection? I let the words hang in the air, heavy with implication and magic. Apparently no one dares to question this, so they continue along. After a couple of paragraphs, Bronte gets to bring up her business, which is about the line of succession for the throne and the murder of her brother. They start arguing that they don't know it's murder. And why is that? I challenged. Have you been too confused, too hobbled by grief to inquire as to what happened? Did you not wonder how a prince of my brother's strength and power could be cut down in the flush of his youth? She asks if it's because they're afraid, and this pisses the council off, and they say she's a hypocrite because she was gone for days following his death and funeral, and she says that she was chased into the woods by guards and was threatened with death. What choice did she have? They start to bring up Giselle again and bringing a mortal to their realm, which I didn't think was illegal, so I don't know why we're fighting about it, because it said the rare few mortals get to come here. But they say that the mortal is an assassin because everyone is just flinging accusations, pretty much. She thinks that they're hiding something, and the gleam in the Countess's eyes is suspicious, and she wonders how the discord serves the Countess's purposes. Bronte says she's not an assassin, she's my champion. They ask how she can know what the mortal's true intentions are, but this pisses the Countess off because a Fae-forged blade would not choose unwisely. And then she addresses the princess, saying that she's quick to trust and slow to doubt, but maybe your judgment is being clouded by sentimentality, but the Autumn Court cannot afford to harbor uncertainties. And everyone murmurs in agreement, and Bronte is kicking herself for speaking out of anger. You are closer to my brother than most in this court. Have you not harbored doubts? Have you not questioned those who stand among us now? Why has there been no suspect named? No one taken into custody to face the justice they deserve? Why does the prince's death go unchallenged? There's obviously a cover-up, and she's right, but I don't know why she's going through these officials she thinks are corrupt directly. Doesn't she outrank them? What is the point? Bronte demands accountability for those who whisper deceit behind closed doors, and we have to confront this to move on. None of these people are happy about her accusing them. Countess Mardev's lips curled into a mocking smile. Ah, princess, it is easy to throw accusations without evidence to support them. Are you prepared to accuse me based on mere speculation and personal vendettas? I straightened my spine and met her challenging gaze. I accuse based on what I have seen and felt in this court. Your closeness to my brother was no secret, Countess. Your influence over him was undeniable. Perhaps he saw through your schemes. She really is messing things up for someone who allegedly needs allies, and this is so disappointing overall to me because I love court intrigue. I loved A Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Cochrane. This just isn't doing it for me. The Countess says, if you have proof against me, present it. But Bronte doesn't have any proof. She only has a feeling. So Bronte says, proof will come in time. I will not stand idle while his killer is at large. And the Countess tells her not to mistake paranoia for proof, and that's kind of a banger. Lord Threeval says this matter will be revisited once there's evidence. And Bronte strides out of the council room, trying to keep her tears at bay. And she starts an entitled thought cycle of how dare they, how dare they. But when you learn more information about all of this, the reason is kind of evident to me as to why they dare. Giselle is hot on her tail and tells her to stop and asks if she's okay. Bronte says that she is, but she won't rest until the truth comes to light. Giselle tells her to be careful because she doesn't trust these people. Bronte says she's made enemies where she least expected it. In a royal court that doesn't support your succession, you didn't expect some of them would be your enemies? The same court that is not investigating your brother's death. That one? Giselle says that she'll follow her and she's hers. Heat rose unbidden to my cheeks. Forgive me, I said. I said many things that I regret. Giselle's lips curved into a smile as she moved closer and bent her head to press her lips to mine. This was so rushed for no damn reason, and I can't stand it. Like, why build up a relationship in a way that makes sense? And the thing is that you wouldn't have to do that if you had a different setup. So if these characters had known each other, like for example, Gideon and Harrow from the Locked Tomb knew each other their whole lives, you could speed run some of this stuff. But instead you decided they should be strangers, so they have to get to know each other for me to care. After they kiss, Bronte says, your loyalty is gratifying. And we end the chapter with her thinking that if she wants to wear the crown, she needs to bring the council to heel and her brother's killer to justice. Because we have to repeat ourselves to death in these books. lest the audience forget what we're doing. Chapter 9, Giselle. Giselle is feeling uncomfortable about being accused of being an assassin and an outsider, but what choice does she really have but to go along with this, honestly? And Giselle knows it's because she's representing the princess and they doubt her, and Giselle wonders if Bronte had been stronger, if she would have needed her at all. Well, she'd need you to get horny over, so that's something. But I was the princess's champion and I couldn't move a muscle if it meant that I would betray her with my weakness. As harshly as they judged me, they did it because they doubted her. If she had been stronger, a leader they respected, that display of defiance would never have happened. Was that why she needed me? A shield against her enemies? And she had so many. Would I have agreed to this so blithely if I had known? Who was I kidding? I didn't know what I'd agreed to, or what oath I'd sworn. I was just following a pretty girl into the woods in the hopes of getting a taste of her. Again, thank you at least for being kind of thirsty and relatable. At least a little bit relatable. Bronte asks if Giselle said something, and Giselle says no, because they can hear each other's thoughts for some reason. I'd taken a chance in kissing her just now. She was vulnerable and angry, rightfully so, and I wanted to show her that I believed her, and that I was willing to help her, but I didn't know how to do it, ... or how useful I could be. How does a kiss convey that? Quickly now. Tell me. They're going back to Bronte's rooms. Bronte says, I hope you weren't offended by what they said. And Giselle says, no, it's fine. They're right. I am an outsider. And Bronte says they shouldn't have the stones to question me. Giselle says, once you have the throne, you won't need me anymore because no one will stand against you then. Bronte says, won't they? And once you fulfill your oath, you're free to leave. But they hold hands. And Giselle says, freedom seems a little contradictory. Contradictory to what? Bronte says, what if something happens to me? My skepticism clung stubbornly to the edges of my consciousness, yet there was something else there too. A pull, a connection to Bronte that defied logic or reason. When I didn't answer, a small smile played upon her lips. Tell me, Sir Raynor, do you ... feel something for me? Something more than a champion should feel for her mistress. My heart skipped a beat, betraying me with its eager response to her proximity. I feel like the mind reading in these books is a way for the author to try and force you to feel like they're already close when the author hasn't done the work to show us that they're close. I'm so sick of it. It felt exactly like that in Off With Her Head, my review for that, and it was obnoxious. Giselle is like, and what if I did have feelings for you? And they start kissing again, and the scent of autumn leaves and magic surround them, wrapping them in a cocoon of desire and danger. I personally don't find the word cocoon sexy, but to each their own, I guess. They decide to go somewhere else so they don't get caught, and they actually head to her chambers now, and they get there, okay? What am I doing? She cried. This is ... madness. Was she talking about me? That kiss? Almost being caught? I thought a princess could do what she liked with her servants, I said boldly. I wanted her, and I knew she wanted me too. I feel like this is a bit contrived for someone who has been reading Giselle's dirty thoughts, but this doesn't last longer than 10 seconds anyway. I can, she said. There was no turning back now. Then how would you command me, princess? A smile tugged at her full lips. Remove your sword, she said. And here we are at the smut, only 29% of the way through. You can like it if you want to. I don't have to though, and I don't. Again, the Locked Tomb is my favorite series, and they haven't even been around one another in the last 2 books. I need yearning. I need pining. I need more of those, okay? Here's the fast rundown. As always, if you want to read the smut, get the book, okay? She tells Giselle to strip. She does. She has Giselle touch herself. The magic starts getting involved, and I didn't really have questions about the magic until this point. What can the magic do and not do? I have no idea. Giselle says, touch me yourself. And Bronte says, I'm the one who's giving commands. She has Giselle get on the bed and spread the legs. It's back to the self-DJ booth for Giselle. Giselle realizes Bronte knew all of her dirty thoughts about her.
Yeah, no shit, honey!
It's the same shit. We've got the apex of her thighs, drenched folds, slick flesh, climax, juices, crashed over me like a torrent of electric fire. What is an electric fire? I don't know. Like, are we talking about an electrical fire? What is so different to you about that? I don't know. This is new territory for Giselle because she has never had a girl dominate her before or be in charge. When a bratty girl tried to dominate me in the past, I'd just scoop her up and pin her to the bed and have my way with her. But I couldn't move. I don't know how I feel about the have my way with her comment because she's from Earth and not the Fae realm. It gave me the ick. Bronte, sits on Giselle's face. There's a lot of uses of the C word.
Oh, I'm edgy. I'm on fire.
Liberty, you're about as edgy as a butter knife.
Bronte gets off first, then it's Giselle's turn. It was strange to be in this position, to be unable to do anything but experience the pleasure she was giving me, forcing me to experience. Giving in to her was ... erotic. So, I wish they would stop using the word force in this context. It just personally gives me the ick. Did she like me this way, unable to move as she teased and tormented me? Yes, she murmured against my mouth. I like you like this, eager and ready and at my command while I fuck you.
But then he took his shirt off and I went, like I actually had, like my body had a reaction with those taps.
I don't need to know about that. You keep that to yourself.
There's some finger blasting with mouth action now included. She gets to the end. Bronte asks her to stay. I didn't know how to feel. My mind was full of doubt and desire and something I couldn't identify. I had surrendered to her, allowed myself to be commanded. I didn't do that. ... I sat up and felt suddenly self-conscious. Someone would be coming with wash water and food. I couldn't be seen like this. Let them see. Bronte said, I am a princess of the autumn court. I may do as I wish. I'm not your pet, I snapped. No, you are my champion, she returned, and I may command you as I please. Yeah, the power imbalance makes me feel weird, and it wouldn't have if the princess wasn't commanding her left and right, particularly about sexual things. Bronte amends her statement and asks her to stay not because she commands it, but because you want to. So Giselle decides she will stay. And the chapter ends with Giselle thinking if anything happens to Bronte, she'll be trapped here. Chapter 10, Giselle. They slept in the same bed together, but Giselle creeps out of the chambers. And while she's out, she hears some servants gossiping about Bronte, and we learn that she and her brother fought before he died, and he had slapped her across the face, and she swore she'd see him dead for slapping her. The servants then say that they don't think the princess would actually do that. Instead of doubting Bronte, who Giselle barely knows and who kidnapped her, she thinks about the countess spreading lies. Make it make sense. Giselle goes out to the courtyard to practice with her sword, but after a bit Bronte shows up and says, I thought I told you not to leave my rooms without me. And Giselle says she needs to practice, but Bronte says, do you? Because Fae-forged blades are meant to find their masters. I still don't get why you would want a sword that does most of the work for you. I can't imagine Gideon Nav wanting a sword like that, you know? We learned that Bronte was hiding in the bushes because she wanted to watch the practicing, and now they're kissing because who cares about the murder mystery plotline when we can just be horny? Bronte knows something is bothering her and she asks what it is even though she can read her thoughts, and Giselle says, you haven't told me anything about your brother. Bronte says, there's nothing to tell, he's dead. Giselle brings up what she heard and Bronte denies it at first, but Giselle keeps trying. Bronte finally confesses that her relationship with her brother was complicated, and she says that while it might have happened, she never actually meant it, and she regretted it as soon as it came out of her mouth, basically. But this is kind of a pretty common thing for siblings, in my opinion. I feel like you're always threatening each other. I don't know. That was just my childhood where you had to compete for your parents' love, and my brother had a one-up because he was a boy and he liked the things that they liked. Giselle asks her to go through what happened exactly, and we learn that they've always had a rivalry for the throne, and Kristar trusted people who were untrustworthy, but don't worry, Giselle wants to trust her, and she has to. She doesn't have much of a choice. Giselle brings up the maid Lurie again, but this time Bronte seems very reluctant to try. So Giselle brings up her cousin Perrin, and Bronte doesn't really want to do anything about that either, but they need answers before it's too late. But Giselle hears that thought and is like, too late? Huh? Too late? I didn't want to ask what she meant. The thoughts in my mind were dark enough. There were too many possibilities, too many angles to watch. Whoever had murdered the prince would not be satisfied with just his death. Even if she refused to admit it, Bronte knew she was in danger. I had seen the fury in Countess Mardove's eyes, and I could not trust anyone I had spoken with, ... especially Errol K. Bella. Hey, we don't need a summarizing paragraph at the end of every chapter. This isn't your persuasive essay that you wrote in high school. Why are we doing this? Chapter 11. Giselle. Giselle can't sit still because she wants to catch the murderer walking around the palace, and she's walking back to the princess's chambers. Did time actually mean anything here? How long had I been Bronte's prisoner? Was I really even a prisoner? I dragged my hand along the rough stones of the corridor, and the scrape of the rocks against my fingertips jolted me back to reality. You're here against your will, I reminded myself. She stole you, lied to you. We're asking some good questions, but are we asking Bronte for answers? Nope. But Giselle thinks about them banging because we're bricked up 24/7, 365 in romantasy. And before you accuse me of hating this genre, I don't. I like romance and I like fantasy. I'm just looking for a romantasy that actually slaps. Hopefully it will be the Tasha Sari one, okay? I would love to do books I love too if you guys are interested, but it seems like negativity is the only thing that gets anywhere on the internet. She gets back and Bronte is in the bath, and Bronte starts hitting on her immediately, but Giselle wants to hear about her brother because they need to start questioning the witnesses. But don't worry, Giselle is also horny. She knew the effect she had on me and she'd exploited it on more than one occasion. Not that I was complaining. Ugh. Barf. Giselle wants to start with the servants, which Bronte didn't think about because she's a classist. The princess doesn't want to go in such a rush, and Giselle kind of wonders why she's stalling. They're going to start with the valets because they would know the prince's whereabouts on the day of the murder, and then they'll ask his private secretary. You didn't think about any of this, and you think you should rule. I don't know about that, Chief. Giselle brings up Lurie and Perrin again, and this is where the book started going really downhill for me. I felt like the first few chapters again were pretty promising, but then it just gave up and decided that readers are inherently stupid. But Bronte doesn't want to talk with them. She wants to start with the servants. But we're back to Horny Town. Despite the urgency of our investigation, my thoughts kept drifting back to her, to the forbidden allure she exuded. It would take no time for me to stride across the room and rip the plum-colored silk from her lithe body. I ached to taste her and hear her moans as they filled the room and echoed off the stone walls, but I couldn't. We needed answers, or ... She didn't want them. I needed to figure out what she did want. You have way more pressing matters to deal with than this. Like, why can't you prioritize anything? They're off to the North Tower where her brother's chambers are, and we go over that his staff will be there until the murderer is found or there's another prince to take over, aka her cousin. And Giselle says, what about you? But Bronte says she doesn't know anything about ruling, so what about her? So what was your whole fuck-ass plan anyway then? Your plan seemed fine to me, but now you're making it seem like it was just hastily put together. Giselle wants to help her, but Bronte isn't so sure. Page break. They're at the tower and they ask the servants about her brother's death, and she's very aggressive immediately, and I don't really want someone who flies off the handle to be the ruler of anything, but that's just me. Also, it makes me super suspicious of her, you know? The servant tells him that the prince was sleeping with Lurie, and this pisses Bronte off, and she dismisses him, and she tells Giselle she thinks they're hiding something. Bronte changes her mind though and thinks they should talk to Lurie because she had access, opportunity, and motive, and she's convinced that Lurie did the murder, even though she didn't think that like literally 2 seconds ago. We end the chapter with them announcing they're going to the servants' quarters before Lurie knows they're looking for her. Chapter 12, Giselle, they go to the servants' quarters. And if you were worried that Giselle isn't captivated by everything Bronte does, you don't need to worry. It's told to us on the first page of this chapter. If you hear chewing, I'm sorry. It's Aaliyah's time to shine at 12:20 a.m. Okay. Do you think we're doing the right thing? I blurted out, breaking the silence between us. Bronte's pace didn't slow. Of course we are, she said. My brother deserves justice and I deserve answers. Lurie's just a maid, I said. Do you really think she could do something like this? I cannot pretend to know what the common folk think, she retorted. Why else would she get so close to Kristar? She has designs on the throne for herself. Is that even possible? I find it odd how Giselle flops back and forth about these things. She was the one who wanted to question Lurie initially, but they go to Lurie's chamber and Lurie is wearing something of the quality befitting Bronte, not a maid. Yeah, because she was the prince's mistress. Bronte demands that she tell her the truth about her brother's death, but she doesn't even let Lurie answer before accusing her immediately, and Lurie says that she doesn't understand. Bronte tells her to stop her lies and you will confess. Giselle says, hey, we need evidence, but Bronte tells her to shut up and says this viper has confessed enough with her silence and her schemes. Except you didn't let her answer at all, so I don't know what we're talking about. Bronte asks why Lurie killed her brother. Lurie starts crying and she says she loved the prince, but he could never marry her and I couldn't bear it. Bronte says, you call this love? Giselle says they need her testimony before the court, and Bronte says, to think I pitied you, and then tells the guards to take her away. Giselle thinks that this doesn't feel right, but Bronte is triumphant and they go back to her chambers. Bronte says justice will be served and his soul will rest easy now. But Giselle asks if she really thinks Lurie acted alone. Bronte says, of course, who else would have a motive? He's the prince who's going to rule the autumn court. Literally anyone who wants the throne, bitch, including you. Giselle says, that's too convenient though, like what about Perrin? But Bronte says they have their answer. She's infuriating, I cannot stand her. This is who we want on the throne. Her. Giselle says,
let's not be too hasty.
They continue to go back and forth for a little bit, but Bronte is convinced that it was Lurie. She's already admitted it. My brother would have set her aside in a moment for a proper royal marriage. It's the way of things and she couldn't accept it. So she killed him in a fit of jealous rage, ... She paused for just a moment and her violet eyes held mine. Any woman would do that for her lover. Wouldn't you, she pressed, if you knew that I would throw you aside in an instant to marry a prince who would guarantee my throne? Would you do anything questionable, dishonorable? No, I choked out. She pouted in mock disappointment, but her eyes flickered with something dangerous as she dragged her hand down my chest. But you would fight for me, wouldn't you? She pressed, her violet eyes dancing with an inner flame. As my champion, you would do anything to keep me safe. You would do as I command. I wouldn't care if she was toxic as long as she was smart at the same time. But she's not being smart. Where is the cunning princess lead that I wanted? Because this is not her. This just devolves into sex immediately, because why wouldn't it? I don't want you to use me, I confess. I don't want to be your distraction from this ... situation. She seemed taken aback by my words. Giselle. She released her hold on my hands and brushed her fingers over my cheek softly, her touch as light as a feather. You are not a distraction, you are a comfort ... a solace. You are my champion after all. I feel like you could make the argument that comforting yourself can be a distraction. Here's the rundown on the sex scene. There's a phallic appendage. It's not attached to anything. It's made of stone, which alarms me deeply. There's eating at the buffet. Then we get this. Leaving my fingers inside her, I slipped the toy along my palm and teased the thick head of it against her entrance, slow and sure. Each inch I pushed inside had her arcing further off the chair, crying out my name. I cannot picture both at the same time. I understand that some people can do that, but my body is incapable, so this made me feel very uncomfortable. Also, the lack of communication made me want to die, but I have trauma, so ignore me. There's some rub-a-dub-dubbing with the clams, and they both get off at some point. Hooray! Chapter 13, Giselle. They wake up to a bunch of shouts and the sound of boots on stone, and Giselle goes to see what all the commotion is about, and she runs into a man, and she asks where the princess's prisoner is, and he gestures to the door and says the princess will want to know. So Lurie is dead. She allegedly hung herself. Giselle asks who found her, has anyone else been in the room, etc. And she tells them to seal the room and don't let anyone in until the princess knows, and to cover Lurie's body and send for a healer. Giselle has to keep herself from throwing up because she's never seen a dead body before. She goes and talks to Bronte. Bronte asks if it's true, and Giselle says yes, Lurie took her own life. Bronte starts sobbing because now they'll never be able to prove what happened to her brother. Giselle walks her back to her room so no one sees them, but then she thinks this shit. Within the confines of her opulent room, Bronte pulled away from me and paced the stone floor like a caged animal, and the transparent fabric of her gown caught the glow of the morning light and almost disappeared. She may as well have been naked, her curves outlines only by a soft pearly glow as she strode past the window. When I could drag my eyes away from her body, I watched her carefully and noted the rapid shift from devastation to a cold resolve that iced over her features. I think there's something particularly antisocial about sexualizing someone who is in distress. She was literally sobbing her eyes out a moment before. and you are checking out her body. I think there's something wrong with you. Bronte comes to the conclusion that Lurie didn't take her own life, and it was too convenient because she was supposed to confess to killing him to the court, and she knows it must have been the Countess's doing. She has motive. She wants influence over the court. Everyone probably knew he and Lurie were banging. They both commit themselves to finding proof. Bronte tries to pressure Giselle into bathing, but Giselle can't because something about Lurie's death just wasn't right. And she knows it wasn't suicide. She thinks she was murdered. And she wants to speak to the healer, but Bronte wants her to stay with her. "Stay with me," Bronte crooned. "You would not deny me." "I have to," I said over my shoulder. "If you want me to protect you, I have to know the truth." She was beautiful, bewitching, terrifying. I could feel the tug of her magic and the clench of my pee in response to it, and at the thought of losing myself in her so that I could forget what I had seen at the prison. If I stayed, I had no doubt that she would dull my mind with lust, and I wouldn't complain ... I wasn't an idiot, but I had to find out what had happened, even if it just confirmed everything I had already guessed. She feels very oddly controlling in a very non-sexy way. I just have to say that about Bronte, okay. Giselle says, "Sorry, I really can't stay," and then she goes. "I would pay for my disobedience later. Maybe she would make me grovel or punish me in some other way. Whatever I found out, it better be worth whatever she would do to me when I returned." I feel like she is genuinely afraid of Bronte, and that isn't something I'm super into. Good for you if you are, but I don't have to be, okay? She goes to the healer's quarters, and an old fae who's the healer is examining Lurie's body, and the healer says Giselle was right to get a healer because Lurie was dead before the noose was tightened on her neck. She was manually strangled. There's like finger marks in her neck. The healer says that there's something else, and Giselle says she's pregnant, isn't she? And it's a big old yes. And I will just say that this felt oddly close to part of the plot of Sleepy Hollow by Tim Burton from 1999. Like, it feels very oddly close, but we'll reserve judgment for now. Day 2 of filming. If you say something about my hair, you're homophobic. Also, I moved my bookshelf over here. I thought it would add to the vibes. I don't know. Chapter 14, Giselle. Giselle is shook because of the royal bastard situation. And she's pacing around the trees, wigging out. And she's wondering if the rules are the same here if bastards don't inherit. Because obviously that has been overall the precedent in our world for royalty, overwhelmingly. But then she's like, what if they were secretly married and that would make the kid legitimate? Well, I mean, that would definitely add to the motive, but that baby's dead, so. And despite herself, she is doubting Bronte, which I think is a smart decision, but we're gonna go through how stupid this book is in a hot minute. The second half of the book is where it absolutely ruined anything the first half had done for me, okay? But because she's clouded by the horny, Giselle is like, well, yeah, that gives Bronte even more of a motive to murder Lurie. However, I refuse to believe this because I'm horny and I like her. So her focus on Countess Mardove must mean something, obviously, if you say so. Now, when I was reading this book, I was hoping that Bronte was actually in on all of this scheming and political show shit, because I was like, yes, make her a little bit evil and make Giselle want her anyway. I'm totally fine with that. Guess what this book didn't do at all? Yeah, we'll get there. And she doesn't want to tell Bronte about the pregnancy, but she's like, I really can't keep this from her. I don't know why. Let's read the paragraph. I finally came to one conclusion. I couldn't keep this secret from Bronte anymore. If she was truly innocent, then she needed to be made aware of the potential threat that lurked within her own court. If she was guilty, ... well, how she reacted to the news could be revealing. So I think part of the problem with this book is that they're telling me that all of the characters in the court for the court intrigue section are smart people who are good at masking their emotions and lying, but the longer we go through the book, we learn that that's just not true, and it's infuriating. I ordered court intrigue, and I got court intrigue from Wish, and that really pisses me off. So she goes back to the palace to talk to Bronte, and she thinks her name really loud. Nothing's happening, and then she said, Bronte, I have to talk to you. But she knows Bronte is in that room, she's just ignoring her. As I waited, I thought about every filthy thing Bronte and I had done, and a few things I wanted to do to her. The back of my neck was hot, my throat was tight as I imagined those things, ... one after the other. If you thought for even a minute any of this book wouldn't be about sex, you were wrong, and I'm sorry. Sorry. But just remember, I didn't write it. I'm suffering with the rest of you. But Bronte opens up that damn door. Is like, you did that on purpose. And Giselle's like, yeah, but it worked. And Giselle is adamant that she has to talk to Bronte right now. And Bronte's like, I don't want to talk. I want you to fuck me. Yeah. Interesting. And she's trying to get it on with Giselle. She's kissing her and she's all like, is this what you want to make your princess beg? And Giselle's like, no, I want you to listen. And Bronte laughs and is like, that's not what I want. And Giselle just keeps insisting and is like, no, you have to listen, okay? And she tells her that Lurie was pregnant and that her suicide was staged. It was a murder, it was a lie. And Bronte asks who knows about this, which to me feels really suspicious, which also lent to me highly suspecting Bronte, even though I knew based on what kind of book this is that they probably wouldn't go that route. Why did you write this? Why did you write this way? And Bronte just starts being in denial mode where she's like, she wasn't pregnant, she wasn't murdered, it's not true. And she says, no, it is true. Like the healer told me, and she cannot accept it. She's like, Christar would never. And Giselle's like, but he did. He did. And Bronte's just like, this cannot be. And will it be? Okay. But we can agree that Bronte's not doing great at this exact moment because her brother's dead, his lover's dead, he and his lover's baby that was not born is dead. I mean, presumably if they actually wanted it, you know, what have you. I'm pro-abortion, obviously. But Giselle thinks the sight of her vulnerability stirred an odd mixture of desire and pity within me. I am so sick of these weirdo main characters getting bricked up over their love interest being in emotional distress. I don't understand it. I don't understand what you think is so fucking sexy about that. Despicable, disgusting, ridiculous. But what does Bronte take away from all of this? Countess Mardov can't be trusted. She's the only one who could have done this. And once again, Giselle's like, we need evidence. There's a lot of repeating in the second half of the book, and I really think it needed more help, particularly in the second half. Giselle says we should search her chambers because there might be evidence, and like, I'll go and I'll uncover any evidence if there is any. And Bronte's like, you would do this for me? And Giselle thinks, I would do anything, which is hilarious because it doesn't say for you. So like, but she's just like, yes. Bronte says that she is going to try and question some of the Countess's servants because while they're very loyal, she might be able to get some of them to crack while Giselle is searching the room. Please remember that. We'll come back to that. They're looking at each other, and then there's this, which is lovely. There was a vulnerability in her eyes that almost made me forget our recent argument. And for a moment, all I wanted was to reach out and brush my fingers through her hair to hold her close and reassure her. That wasn't what she needed right now. I mean, you guys are taking a break every 5 seconds to bang like rabbits. Like, the murder mystery plot is not that important to y'all. So I don't know why you can't just like hug her for a minute and then go, but okay. And you'll see when we get to Countess Mardov's chambers, a few minutes wasn't gonna kill you anyway because the plot is stupid. So Giselle's going through the palace and she's thinking this. The palace was a labyrinth of splendor, and as I ventured deeper into it, each turn set me more off balance. I didn't belong here, and it seemed as though even the stones set into the walls resented my presence. I like that idea. Was it executed well? No. I feel like we can say she doesn't belong here without the hand holding. Like, if you had just crossed out the I didn't belong here, that would have made it better, because then it would have been the palace was a labyrinth of splendor, and as I ventured deeper into it, each turn set me more off balance, and it seemed as though even the stones set into the walls resented my presence. That would be much better. That would be less hand-holdy, you know? Anywho, she gets there and they're obviously guards because, yeah. And he says, she's not taking any visitors today. Is there a message that you would like to leave? And Giselle lies and is like, well, yeah, I have a message from the princess. It's urgent. Like, I have to talk to her right now. And he's like, okay. But protocol was clear. And as the champion of the princess, I think she meant it seemed, but I'll read it as written. I seemed that I had certain privileges even I wasn't aware of. So you definitely meant it seemed, which is fine. Mistakes happen, like that baby. Sorry. awful, but it's true anyway. I would actually like to know about the privileges that she's afforded for being champion, because I think if we saw some of the privileges, like the actual privileges, and then saw how she was treated as a mortal, because even though she's a champion, a lot of these people are very xenophobic. We see it through the entire book. They probably wouldn't acquiesce to her anyway, unless Bronte was like right there. So I wish we had seen more of that instead of all of this nonsense. She goes into the rooms and she's looking around until she smells the Countess, because of course we have to. It's a sweet perfume laced with the faintest hint of decay. It smelled like power. What does power smell like, and why does it smell like decay? I don't know. I don't know. I hate when we talk about smells, but they're not necessary, or they don't really help anything, or it doesn't mean anything the way you're describing it. And I got to the end of this book and there's a list of this author's other works, and she writes ABO. So I was right, and I now know why there's so many fucking smells in here. If you wanted to keep writing ABO, you should have just kept doing that. Like, why can't you write Faye ABO? No one's stopping you. Don't let anyone dim your fucking sparkle. Write that freaking alpha, beta, omega shit if you want to. I support you. I support women's rights. I support women's wrongs. But the Countess is in the fucking rooms because, yeah, he said she wasn't taking any visitors. If she wasn't in there when he said, do you have a message? Then you're like, yeah, it's urgent. He would direct you to where she actually is. Of course she's in the rooms. You fucking imbecile. And the Countess is pissed off about this, and Giselle is like, hey, I was sent by the princess. And the Countess is like, you shouldn't have been admitted in here. Fair enough. And I feel like Giselle plays up a little bit the whole, like, I'm human, don't be mean to me. Of like, my apologies, I didn't mean any disrespect. You know, like trying to make it seem like she doesn't know the rules. And the Countess is very interested in what the princess could have sent Giselle for, that she would like send the champion instead of just like directly say shit, you know? And so Giselle has to make up a lie on the fly, because of course she does. What else is she gonna do? So she says, she sent me to see if you could set up a meeting with her and her cousin, because you're close with her cousin, and she said you would be able to do it. And Giselle says, yeah, she thought, you know, because it's a delicate matter, it might be best if it went through you. And the Countess is like, fascinating, because she's the only semi-intelligent character, but as we get further in here, that's really not saying much of anything, okay? And Giselle's just like, well, I delivered the message as, you know, given to me. So if there's anything missing, I don't know. The Countess offers her a drink, and at first Giselle's like, you know what, I might actually take one. But then she's like, actually, never mind, that's a bad idea. But the Countess decides to have her own drink. She took a sip without breaking eye contact. Another show of power. Why are you holding my hand this hard? The eye contact could have just told me that. Again, some of these sentences, you needed to cross out certain bits to make them better, to make them stronger. You know, I don't know what someone's doing in my damn walls, but they better knock it off. The Countess says, okay, I got your princess's message. You can tell her that I will arrange a meeting with her and her cousin, Perrin. But because Giselle is nosy and she so clearly wasn't here for this, and I feel like the Countess should just know that, but no one in this book is very intelligent. She's like, hey, can I ask you a question about Lurie? And the Countess is like, I didn't know about her. Like, she was a servant, why would I care about her? But Giselle's convinced that this is a lie, that it has to be. Obviously it's a lie, because the Countess was super close with the prince. The prince was banging this girl to the point where she's pregnant, and everyone else, it seems, except for Bronte, knew about it. So of course she knew, and she's lying, but like, what are you gonna do in this situation? I don't know if I'd admit to that either. And Giselle tries to kind of pique the Countess's interest by being like, oh, I guess you wouldn't be like interested in the rumors about her death then. And she's like, some say that, you know, she committed suicide, like a mystery. She was so close to the crown prince. But the Countess is not showing any like signs outwardly, except she is, which is annoying, because she's like, the older woman's eyes didn't reveal any sign of fear or guilt, but something in them definitely shifted, like an echo being stifled at its source. Like, yeah, you're implying that she is feeling something about it, and Giselle can see it. So none of these people are actually good at this whole courtier business. And I'm saying this because the Countess is the best one at this, yet she's not good. So We'll get there. And the Countess is like, okay, like, was she close to the Crown Prince? And how is that your business? Giselle tries to play off as, it might be nothing, but you seem like someone who wants to know about everything that goes down in this palace. So I thought you just might want to know. After I left the room, one thing became clear. The Countess knew more than she was letting on. See, other than the weird look in her eyeballs, which you can decipher apparently, I don't really understand how you think that, because she's just straight up denying everything like she has a lawyer present. So I don't know. And as she's going back, she's like, I hope Bronte isn't mad about me arranging a meeting with her and her cousin, but like I had to think on the fly. My mind kept reeling back to the moment when I mentioned Larry's death. The way Countess Mardov's eyes had shifted wasn't fear or surprise, but more like ... intrigue. And yet she dismissed it so quickly. And that's how we end the chapter. Yeah, I mean, this is so stupid. So we're gonna talk about it, okay? So this is probably a super unpopular opinion in the fantasy sphere of books, but I don't care, so I'll just say it. Court intrigue is my favorite part of fantasy. I know that's unpopular. I don't care. I love people dancing around each other with words and like hiding things and doing all of this shit where they're trying to get out of things or like make their intentions not clear, try to snuff out who is an ally, who's not, how can we be a benefit to each other. I love that. So for examples, I loved in Tasha Suri's trilogy, can't remember what the actual trilogy name is, but The Jasmine Throne is the first one, right? Out of the 3 books, the second one, The Oleander Sword, it's my favorite of the 3 because of all the court intrigue, because of the well done court intrigue. I also said earlier in the video, The Queen of Coin and Whisper by Helen Cochran. Amazing, amazing court intrigue. I loved it. And there was still, you know, some spying, some assassination attempts, some violence. It was great, and it was YA, and it was amazing. Another one I can think of is The Magic of the Lost trilogy by C.L. Clarke. The middle one, which is The Faithless, that's mostly court intrigue. That, I haven't read the 3rd book yet, but that so far is my favorite book of the trilogy because of the court intrigue. I want court intrigue. But I want it to be well done. I want it to be interesting. I want the characters to be more than one-dimensional. So a book series that I actually didn't like very much that I talked about in my yearly reading wrap-up is, I don't remember what the series is called. It's Swords and something. But the first book is The Untethered Mage. Again, I loved the second book and the 3rd book because it was more court intrigue with people who had their own things to gain, including her second love interest, Kaith. I loved him. He was the Crow Lord from the other country that's very split up and they have magical warlords, right? And he was always out for himself for the most part until he really started to get feelings for her. And they were kind of just using each other, playing each other back and forth. But there are multiple times when he kind of just betrays her outright. And he's like, whoopsie poopsie, you're upset about that. I fucked up, but also I got what I wanted. So, and I loved him. I thought it was a great story, and I loved seeing people who are from 2 very different courts have to try and dance around each other and interact with one another, but they don't exactly speak the same kind of courtier language. I loved that. This is none of that, and it infuriates me because I thought we were going to be getting a lot of court intrigue, but the court intrigue we get is dumb. Was the point I was trying to get across from all of that rant, whatever. Chapter 15, Bronte. She's pacing around her chambers, and she wishes, you know what? I'll read it because it's ridiculous and I'd rather just read it because then we can just break it down. I paced my chambers full of restless energy that I could only have one outlet. Reading Giselle's thoughts had been something I'd tried to avoid at first, but there were such delicious things buried there. Thoughts that made my lips curl and my pussy throb with need. She was loyal, but only where it served her purpose. She would help me, but only because she couldn't leave on her own. Without fulfilling her task, the spell couldn't be broken, or perhaps it could, but I was in no hurry to break it. We have a lot going on there, so I don't need to know about anything throbbing. Number 1. Thanks for that. But of course she's not actually loyal to you because you kidnapped her from another realm under false pretenses. Of course she's not actually, well, I mean, I wish she wasn't actually loyal to her is the problem. I wish she was actually more, I wish they were both more morally gray than they end up being. That's my opinion. I think they would have been more interesting. So Giselle is back and she's like, please tell me you found something. And Giselle's like, well, she's hiding something, but Bronte is not having this. And she's like, did you actually find something in her chambers? What happened? And she didn't find anything because she was there. And she's like, she was there and I spoke to her. And she admits that she had to think of a lie. And she's also like, I don't understand why you shouldn't speak with him. Like, maybe he knows something. And Bronte is like, yeah, but I don't trust him. He's too insistent. He's too eager to meet with me. Well, we only had one person say, hey, Perrin really wants to talk to you. We had one. How is he being insistent? He hasn't broken down the doors or shown up. So he's not really even that insistent. Giselle's like, hey, I know we don't trust him, but we're running out of time. We have to do something. And she's like, what if that something gets us both killed? This is a trap. We're just walking into it. What other choice do you have? Giselle argued back, her voice rising to meet mine. We take precautions, we plan ahead, but if you continue avoiding him, the court might take it as your weakness. You need to show them you aren't afraid and that you're ready to take Kristar's place. That's what you want, isn't it? I think it's odd that I feel out of the two of them, Giselle has a much better grasp on the court than Bronte does. I think that's insane, and it could have been way more interesting, but we didn't write it more in a more interesting way, you know? And Bronte is like, fine, I'll meet with Perrin. And Giselle asks if she thinks the Countess is involved with Lurie's death. Like, do you really think that? And Bronte says, the Countess has positioned herself very carefully in court. She loved my brother, she loved my cousin, and she advanced them for her own gain. So I don't really understand that either, because Kristar was going to inherit if he didn't die. So what do you mean she advanced them for her own gain? She didn't have to do shit to advance your brother. He was gonna be king regardless. So I don't really understand what you're talking about. And she sees how Giselle's eyeing her and she's like, I can tell she's wondering if I'm jealous of how she treated them, and like, how could I not be? Do we explore this more? Not really. And Bronte decides on a whim, I want to confront her right now. And Giselle's like, what? And she's like, yeah, she's in her chambers, right? I want answers. I'm going. But don't worry, if you thought we were gonna walk somewhere without getting horny, fear not, dear friends. We're walking and horny. I could feel Giselle's eyes on my body as the delicate fabric fell to the floor. I could hear her thoughts too. Delicious. She had already teased me with her desire to make me open the door. I'd have to find a way to punish her for it later. Again, with the power imbalance, I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know about that. I forgot to mention, she switched into a more ridiculous dress, which is part of the whole like she's delicious thing. But it's very heavy and she hates it because she's never been this covered up, and she wants to have the seamstresses lower the neckline, make some sheer panels, and no one can say she's not properly dressed anymore. I'm like, well, you're still princess, you're not queen, so they can and they probably will, but okay. Also, this is a fake court and I'm very interested to know why that matters. And I guess we'll talk about it a little more later because it ties into another topic that I want to talk about, but ugh. Remember the thing about the talking to the Countess's servants? Here we go. I had said that I would speak to the Countess's servants, but in truth, such a thing was beneath me. I'd spent the entirety of her absence pacing my chamber, consumed with rage and disbelief at my brother's foolishness. He had risked everything, the peace of the kingdom, everything our father had fought for the warmth of a common servant girl in his bed? Impossible. Number one, classism, staggering. I understand, like, it's fine, because I know what kind of story this is. There's gonna be classism usually. However, she just straight up lies to Giselle many times, and this just kind of fueled the fire for me of being like, I hope she's secretly in on some of this fucked up shady shit, because even Giselle admitted that the person who would benefit the most from Lurie, who was pregnant, being dead, is Bronte. But unfortunately, we don't go that direction. Unfortunately, we don't. They get there, they go on in because she's the princess, and of course they have to just let her in wherever. We talk about more smells, including aged parchment and lavender, which she associates with the Countess. You didn't need to say that because you're in her rooms. I know that. Okay. Again, if we just cut off the second part of the sentence, it would have been fine. It would have been fine. I don't know why it looks like I don't know if I just pulled my hair too tight, but like this side, it's not as crazy. Whatever. So I wish I could show you guys. I have a dinosaur bone clip in. It's so cute. I got a Hot Topic. I barely ever go there, but I was trying to treat myself a little. And the Countess gets up and does like a full curtsy, and it's like, hello? And she's like, your champion visited me earlier. I didn't think you would come by. Like, oh, what do I owe the pleasure of your visit? And she's like, I have questions only you can answer. And the Countess tries to get them to sit, and Bronte's rude for no reason, which again just kind of leads me to believe that she understands nothing about her own court politics. She's like, no thank you, we don't need pleasantries, we'll just stand, we're not here for a social visit. And I'm like, I don't understand. I kind of wish that if she had been a character who deeply doesn't understand the politics of her own court because she was very isolated for whatever reason, I wish we would have decided that she wants to learn, that she wants to play the game, that she wants to get in with these people and make herself seem like not a threat but also the obvious choice for the crown. But she's not smart enough to think of that. None of these characters are. And the Countess is just like, okay, fine, ask your fucking questions. And Bronte's like, I know about Lurie, I know about my brother's indiscretion. And the Countess is just like, and she's like, and how would you feel if that indiscretion caused more problems than just Lurie abandoning her duties as a servant? The Countess's face pales a little, but she's also like, you're speaking in riddles. Like, if you have something to say, Lurie was pregnant. My pregnant. Is it possible I could be pregnant? And the Countess is like, why should I care what some kitchen slut was doing? What would I know about a servant's life? And immediately out the gate, Bronte's like, you're lying. Giselle told me you denied even knowing who she was, but how could you not know what was going on? You knew who she was. You were close to my brother, closer than I would have liked. You would have known who was going in and out of his fucking rooms, especially if they didn't leave. And the Countess is like, does your champion question my conduct? And Bronte's like, no, I do. And the Countess just laughs. Is like, you have to forgive me, your highness, but are you foolish enough to believe that I care about a servant? If she was spreading her legs for the crown prince, like, she wouldn't have been the first or only to do that. Which is fair, but again, if we're going for court intrigue, secrets have power. This obviously wasn't a secret, but still having your inner circle knowledgeable of this so that other people wouldn't be blackmailing you over it, probably kind of important. I kind of think the route she should have gone, if this was well written, is that she should have just denied knowing anything about like the death or anything, but being like, yeah, I know Lurie, she's fine. She was hoeing it up, but like, I didn't talk to her much. She's beneath us and like, she didn't cause problems as far as I do. I think that would have been fine, but these characters aren't smart, so I'm hoping for like Game of Thrones court intrigue, or, I mean, Game of Thrones isn't even my favorite, but I still think it's leagues better than this. Or like any of the other books I was saying court intrigue level, that's what I wanted, and that's not what was delivered. And Bronte just says she was accused of murdering my brother. She was to be brought before the court to confess her crimes or to name who had done the deed if she was innocent. And the Countess is like, very just, very noble. If I had discovered such evidence, I would have taken her head myself. And Giselle says she was murdered in her cell, but you already knew that. And the Countess is like, only because you came into my rooms unannounced telling me. And she's just like sick of this, and she's like, if this is you guys' idea of a joke, I'm not interested. It's not funny. And Bronte's like, I wish we were joking, but there's evidence of foul play. Am I wrong to come to you first? Or should I have taken this to the council instead? And the Countess is just like preposterous and like laughing. And she's like, what is it you're accusing me of? Or like, are you accusing me of plotting against the throne? Like, what evidence to your claims do you have? And Bronte's like, okay, then lay all your cards on the table. If innocence is your banner, dispel these shadows with truth. And the Countess is like, all right, let's speak the truth then. You see conspiracy where there is only duty. The Countess snapped. Yes, I have made difficult decisions, ones necessary for the greater good of our court, ones that perhaps you could not understand. And Giselle kind of takes a step forward, and Bronte wonders for some fucking reason if Giselle would take the Countess's head if she ordered it. Again, this was leading me to believe that she was scheming up a storm and was actually involved in the death of at least one of the parties who's dead. It led nowhere. And Bronte's like, conspiracy, duty. She's like, murder is not a matter of perspective. It's a fact that Hitler has confirmed it. Well, if you ask the United States right now, murder is a matter of perception, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's a shit show in here. Like, comment, subscribe so I can hopefully leave at some point. Please, I adore all of you. I will review any book you want. if I start making money off this. I promise. You guys could even be like, Shelby, I want you to read a straight book once in a while. I'll do it. I'll do it. I get beat up by children for a living. Nothing is beneath me. The Countess says, and here I was starting to believe that you were different from your brother, but you're so quick to pass judgment. And this makes Bronte upset. And she's like, my brother was a good man. He believed in justice. He would have been a good king. And yet he kept a lover while promised to another. The Countess shot back with a bitter laugh. Is that your idea of a good king? His liaison with a maid could have threatened this kingdom. So my question is, because this is a Fae world, obviously, so not everything is one for one, how could it have jeopardized his rule or the kingdom at all? Because I just think about so many royal people we've had in history that have not had any problems with that. The only one I can think of, and again, I'm not an expert on all royalty, I'm just saying, like, I used to be really into it. It used to be a weird special interest. I can't even explain it. But the only one I can really think of off the top of my head is Henry VIII toyed with the idea of legitimizing his son, who was a bastard, Henry Fitzroy, because for a long time with Queen Catherine of Aragon, he only had Mary. And that's because she was pregnant every other week. I swear to God, she was losing babies left and right. Some of them made it to full term and then died later. It's very sad. I feel so bad for her. At the same time, she was an actual, like, real Catholic, and she was starving herself so that they would bring the leftovers to the poor. So that had to definitely have something to do with it, other than it also being like the fucking 1500s or whatever it was. But we are never given any examples like that in this book where it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so's bastard was legitimized for X, Y, and Z reason, and that's why this could have been really catastrophic for everybody. We never have any of that explained, or like even a couple examples or anything. Like even one example could be fine. We get nothing. This book gave me nothing. And Giselle's like, okay, enough. We're not here to discuss the prince's virtues. Well, if theoretically him having a bastard child was deemed a threat to the kingdom for realsies, and so they killed him because he was adamant he wanted to keep banging this maid before he was even married. I don't see why a lot of things, but number one, they should have just killed her first. That makes the most logical sense if it was really about that. And then the Countess, who so clearly wants Perrin to be king, if they decide to get rid of Christar later, that would be whatever. But at all. So stupid. And the Countess kind of mocks Giselle a little bit too, and is like, yes, the champion protecting the princess. So cute. The Countess says, I didn't know that Lurie was pregnant, but I won't deny that I knew they were banging. Bronte really wants to be able to hear the Countess's thoughts, but she knows that if the Countess detected her magic trying to read her mind, that she would just counter it with her own shit and it wouldn't work. Then the Countess does reveal a small portion of information. Christar confided in me, she continued. He said that he was in love, truly in love for the first time. He wanted to end his engagement and marry Lurie. She let out a heavy sigh. Foolish boy. I convinced him not to. And Bronte asks why. She says, because it would have plunged our beloved court into chaos, she replied evenly. The kingdom needs an alliance more than it needs another scandal. See, the other thing is that we don't really learn anything about the other courts at all. So why they need this alliance? Unclear. Why him marrying a maid would be such a huge scandal? Unclear. All of it? Unclear. I think we're supposed to like fill in the blanks for ourselves, but that's not how books are supposed to be. Books aren't supposed to be those Mad Libs things where you used to like insert random words to try and make it funny for all your friends, you know? And I'm not saying everything needs to be explained in every book, but when it's court intrigue and fantasy, I expect to know why things are happening. And Giselle's like, okay, and what about Lurie though, with the whole not marrying thing? And she's like, well, I'm sure she still would have been well cared for. Christar always looked after the ones he loved. And Bronte again is like, but you didn't know about the baby. And the Countess says again, no, I did not. It doesn't seem like she was far enough along for most people to be able to tell. You know what I mean? I don't know. And Bronte still thinks she can't trust the Countess, which I know, you don't shut up about it. And the Countess is like, okay, so you're a champion also. When she came over, said you really want to speak to your cousin. Is that true, or was that just a lie so you guys could question me some more. And Bronte obviously has to lie too and is like, no, I am adamant about speaking to my cousin. She's like, I've heard he's wanted to talk to me. And the Countess is like, for some time now, yeah. I have been mourning the death of the Crown Prince, I snapped. My own brother. He cannot expect me to allow anyone to come into my presence under such duress. Kind of a good point. One of the only times she brings up something that actually makes sense. And the Countess is just like, agreed, you have to forgive his eagerness. Kristar was like a brother to him too. And Bronte's like, perhaps. The Countess is like, okay, I will arrange for you and Perrin to see each other. And Bronte is like, I'll let you know when I want to talk to him. And the Countess says, of course not, Princess, which doesn't really make any sense. But okay, I don't know what that means. I don't know. Because the actual word for word, I shall send word when I am ready to meet with him. And then the Countess says immediately after, of course not, Princess. What does that mean? Of course not what? Huh? I'm sick of this. And then the Countess is sick of this. It's like, is there anything else you need, Princess? And Bronte's like, no, thanks for your honesty. You have given me a great deal to think about. Sure. And the Countess tries to be like, I hope nothing I said caused you any grief. And she's just like, none at all. You've been a gracious hostess. And then she's like, okay, we're leaving, bye. Whatever I had been hoping to achieve here, I had not done it. I had failed. And that failure twisted in my gut like a knife. I mean, yeah, I don't really think you had any good plan. I also don't understand why you keep coming up with convoluted reasons to question people, because at this time, technically speaking, you are next in line for succession. You should be able to question whoever the fuck you want. But you don't, so I don't really understand it. Like, you just make up all these convoluted reasons to try and get these people to admit to things, when I think you either should have been conducting actual, real investigations with all the fucking resources you have, or you should have, was my other thought. See, this book is making me feel stupid. Or you should have ingratiated yourself with them more. You should have tried harder to get in with the court to kind of replace your brother, but you're not smart enough to plan anything. Dear God. We end the chapter with her thinking about how she doesn't want to see her goddamn cousin, but she's gonna have to be ready even if she's not. Chapter 16, Bronte again. We start this chapter about how she doesn't want to meet with her cousin. Yes, I know. It's 1 page difference. I remembered from that page to this page. Thank you. It wasn't Giselle's fault. I hadn't warned her to avoid mentioning his name. I had hoped that she would forget and that Errol's words would fade away into the trees where they belonged. But I had to face him now. We learned that her cousin has been her adversary since they were children. I mean, yeah, that's kind of obvious. And Bronte hates him. And she thinks about the moments where he had been cruel to her or had hurt her. And she thinks about how her brother had urged her to forgive their cousin. And she had tried, but she can't. And I understand that. That's realistic. Now she's just watching Giselle sleep, because of course she is. And she thinks again about how it's going to be a pity to give her up when it's time. But she also thinks this really manipulative, like, what if her task was never completed? What if she never left my side? Again, this was all fueling my belief that Bronte is not a good person, which would be fine if the narrative, committed to that. But no, we don't get to have anything in this house. Then we have this, which is super confusing. I was the mistress here, the only member of the royal family who could give such a command, the only person in the kingdom without enough power to do as I pleased. Even the Countess would cower in fear if she knew how much of the dark glow coursed through my veins. But Giselle, could I bind her to me in such a way without any guilt? Okay, but number one, I don't understand the I'm the only member of the royal family who could give such a command. But then it says the only person in the kingdom without enough power to do as I pleased. So which is it? Which is it? Again, that last part of the sentence needed to be stricken from it. And then we talked about the dark glow very briefly earlier, and we don't really talk about it again. What? You have this thing that could plunge the court into darkness running in your veins, but you're not using that as a bargaining chip at all. And we don't really have many societal reasons. Let's just be honest, we don't have any societal reasons given as to why you wouldn't even try to do that, or why it's so culturally abhorrent to somebody that they would freak out and not let you be queen. We never learn enough information about this culture to understand why things are done certain ways. We also have to spend time thinking about how Giselle is not like the other lovers she's had before. Woohoo, not like other girls. We love it. I thought about Perrin and Errol again. Their scheming and calculating ways. Did they understand what it meant to be true? To be honorable? Giselle did. She might have been a mortal, but she understood the concept better than most fae. Her honor wasn't born out of fear or a thirst for power like theirs. It was instinctual, natural as breathing. Yeah, but you don't have those qualities either. You're running around scheming against all these people that you think are against you. And also, I just want to say, we hear about Perrin and Errol's scheming and calculating ways a lot. Do we ever get to actually see those? No, not really. No. They have basically one big hurrah, and that's it. Anyway, a servant walks in, they're naked in bed, and she's like, "Oop, sorry, bye." Like, and she just like leaves, you know. "I didn't care that I was naked. My servants would be fools to think that I wouldn't keep my champion as close as I could. I needed her. I nodded at the servant and waved my hand to shoo her away. Leave us. Be always away." Okay. Again, I thought like the keeping her close by like fucking her, let's be real, was kind of an interesting idea, but again, Bronte isn't really as bad of a person as her internal monologue would lead us to believe, which is really frustrating. Like, I wanted her to be conniving, I wanted her to be underhanded, I wanted her to be smart and ruthless and planning, and we didn't get any of that. Anyway, Giselle's up now. No, sorry, she was like murmuring, and then freaking Bronte falls back asleep for a little bit, and when she wakes up, Giselle's not there, and she's like, "Giselle," and Giselle was just washing, so she comes out and she's like, "I'm here, it's fine," and she feels relieved, and she's like, "Oh, I thought you were gone," and she's like, "Yeah, I thought about it, but then I scared a servant on accident. She almost spilled all the washing water, and I didn't want that to go to waste." And then there's some teasing about Bronte snoring, but it's really stupid, so I don't know. "I didn't trust easily, but with Giselle, it was different, as if she was an exception to all of my rules." Why? So here's the thing, fam. I understand why Giselle has to trust Bronte, because there's really no other option in this magical land where she is bound by a spell between the two of them. She doesn't have a choice, or she doesn't get to go home. There's really no choice there. But I don't understand why Bronte trusts Giselle, other than she's also bound to her, and their fates are basically intertwined. But that doesn't mean you can trust somebody. Like, wouldn't you think in the back of your mind, what if Perrin or Errol or the Countess say, "Hey, I know how to get rid of that spell without you having to do any of this"? Whether that's a lie or not doesn't matter. If Giselle believed that, she might run off and try to get out of it a different way. But you don't think about that because this book is stupid. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Like, I don't understand why she is the only exception, you know? Anyway, Giselle carries the princess to her bath, which is hot. I am who I am. I'm honest. I don't care. She tells Giselle to like sit near her. She likes it when she watches her. Ew. She asks about what they do for bathing in the mortal realm, and she's like, "Yeah, we don't really bathe that much. We like take a shower." And then Giselle has to explain what a shower is. And I did kind of like that part, and I wish we had more of that like kind of cultural learning between the two of them, but there really isn't that much. And I feel like we barely learn anything about the Fae Court, and that's obnoxious because we spend almost all of the fucking book there. There is some immediate, pretty much devolves almost immediately into more sex. So we're just gonna do the highlights, okay? They're both doing the self-DJ booth in front of one another. Okay, they both get off. Hooray. There's some finger sucking. I'm not going over that. And then there is some finger blasting from Giselle to Bronte. Congrats. They're still in the tub. Well, I mean, Bronte is still in the tub, by the way. Okay, they finish, and then Giselle's like, "What are you gonna do about Perrin? Because we have to keep repeating things." I will also say, like, I'm not against there being sex in like a high intensity murder mystery type romantasy, but it has to be done well. Like, and this isn't. This is like they get sidetracked by sex every 5 seconds, and they're not actually that committed to the murder mystery. But Bronte's just like, there's nothing to do. I'm just meeting with him, I guess. And Giselle says sorry again. Like, I was just caught off guard. And she asks, like, what if he challenges you? But Giselle must see something in the look on her face, because she's like, actually, don't answer that. And she's like, we'll figure this out. Chapter 17, Giselle. She thinks this about Bronte, I suppose. The speed that her emotions could change was unlike anything I'd seen before. And I thought mortal women were unpredictable, ...
Hell no. To the no.
What in the misogyny, Batman? So I feel like there is more misogyny in the second half, which is very odd. Very odd. So there's a servant again, and the look in the servant's eyes makes Giselle wonder if she's afraid of her royal mistress, and I think the answer is fucking yes. And the servant's like, "Hey, I'm sorry to disturb you, princess." And Bronte is like, "You are disturbing me." She like snaps at her like,
What do you want?
And she says, the message came for you, princess, from, and Bronte is like, I know who it's from. And she takes it and she gets the servant to leave because she's kind of just a dick to anyone who's not the same tax bracket as her. But when she's telling her to go, she's like, get some wine and something for us to fucking eat. And she's like, all right. She like scrambles out of the room. Yeah, because every fucking person who's not high up in this court is terrified of her, and I feel bad for them. Like, their lives are gonna be miserable. She opens the letter and Giselle's like, is that good news? A letter from my cousin, she said stiffly. He begs my indulgence for a meeting, an audience. Will he come here? She shook her head. The council chamber. He wants witnesses to our conversation. I do not doubt that the countess has advised him in this. Probably because you're kind of acting really erratic. Okay, so just because, I'm not gonna spoil the whole thing, but just because she's kind of right about people being involved with her brother's death doesn't mean that you should be running around accusing people with no proof, and that's why everyone is kind of like, oh, she's acting nuts. Because even if you're right, if you have no proof, you can't even do anything with it. And Giselle says, I'll be there if he tries anything, and Bronte's like, he wouldn't dare. And Giselle's like, okay, what are you gonna do? I'm not sure, she admitted. If I refuse, it will make me look bad in front of the council. If I agree, ... She trailed off and shook her head. Obvious what he's trying to do. He's trying to trap you, I said. Yes. Bronte looked down at the letter again and sighed heavily. It was a good move, ... for him. Is there any chance you could turn this around, use it to your advantage? And Bronte says that she could perhaps undermine his credibility. And Giselle's like, okay, how do you plan to do that? But don't worry. Giselle is still thinking about how vulnerable Bronte looks right now and how it makes her seem more real, more human, that she's vulnerable and unsure, and she's normally so composed, impeccably put together. I don't think so, based on literally anything we've seen from her. I don't think so, because she's had not a singular actual plan that you didn't have to like force her into executing. So I don't agree. Again, Giselle says, again, I'll be there. I won't let anything happen. We know. Can we all shut up now? But Bronte's like, yeah, but I don't want to put you in danger. I've been in more dangerous situations than a council meeting. It was meant to make her laugh. I'd never really been in danger before. Every bout I'd taken part in at the medieval fairs had been strictly choreographed, except for a few mistakes and a few unplanned broken bones and bad faith opponents. This was different. I'd seen enough movies to know that being a champion wasn't exactly a ceremonial role. She might call on me to fight for her, and this place was nothing like the fair. Just like, okay, so we're just all lying to each other. Lovely. I understand more when Giselle lies, though, to be fair. Again, I don't have anything against lying in books. I think it's just that, like, I don't think the author was super intentional about anything with, like, what each character is concealing from one another and why and how they would go about that and how their different personalities would affect the way that they do that, or even, like, their upbringing or anything. We never get any of that. Bronte says, tomorrow's gonna be challenging, but I'm ready. And they toast and they're gonna have some wine. And Giselle is like, okay, but if you're gonna need a champion, I'd better get some practice in. Like, I can't embarrass the princess. And she asks if she can watch. And Giselle a little put off by this and was like, yeah, I guess if you want. Another thought tugged at me. Did she want to make sure that I didn't speak to anyone else without her there? Maybe she didn't trust me. Is this thought ever really expanded upon? Thought about seriously? No, not really. No, this is like a one and done, I swear to God. And she's like, okay, I'll meet you in the courtyard, finish eating. And Bronte says, I won't be long. So she goes out, she does swinging, dodging, whatever. And then eventually Bronte shows up, but she's not hiding in the bushes this time. And she compliments her technique again. And then Bronte's like, I've been thinking about what you said earlier about turning Perrin's appeal into an advantage. And she's like, I've been ... hesitant. Perrin has always been an asshole. She smiled just a little. Your turns of phrase are so ... fascinating. But yes, he has always hated me. But the idea of family turning against family ... She shook her head ruefully. It's difficult for me. I can't imagine, I told her, and I meant it. Betrayal was one of the harshest pains to bear, especially from those we cared about the most. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the betrayal part is true, sure. However, I don't really understand this because this court is supposed to be at least kind of difficult to live in and be a little bit cutthroat, I think. I think that's what we were going for. That's not what we achieved. Because she has never been close to her cousin. She actively hates her cousin. I don't understand why the idea of turning against family is so hard for her. Theoretically, in her mind, he killed her brother, who she actually did care about despite having a complicated relationship with him. But you're just just fine with him being out and about as long as he doesn't try to take your throne because he's related to you. I don't understand that. But she says, I have to do what's best for the kingdom though, like even if it means betraying my cousin. Then page break. Hooray. They go to the council room. They are announced to the council. Also, I have another question. What exactly does the council do? What exactly does the council do? I don't know. How is the council different from, I don't know, like, you know, we have so many different forms of government, not that many, but still like different offshoots, obviously. But in a lot of monarchies in the mortal realm or what have you, there ends up being like a parliament or a senate type something, particularly in obviously like constitutional monarchies. However, this is clearly not that. So my question is, what does the council even do? I don't know. It doesn't seem like they just advise the person who's in charge. So again, I don't understand what we're talking about. And Bronte's in and she's all like announcing to the autumn court that it's her cousin who called everyone here today, but he has not told me the reason for the summons. And Perrin, who we've been shit talking this entire time, finally shows up 63% of the way through this book. And this is another reason why I don't think he was ever actually that serious of a fucking threat, because why wouldn't he be more present in the book if he was, is my question. But he's like, I think you know why, cousin. And she's just like, do we? And he's like, your claim to the throne is as frail as the last leaf clinging desperately to an oak, and your dramatic musings are misplaced. Is it not true that you were complicit in the events leading to the prince's demise? Perrin pressed. And people start gasping, and she's like, what is he implying? You guys are all really smart. I know you are. You're always telling me interesting things in my comments, and I love y'all. So what about the sentence, is it not true that you were complicit in the events leading to Prince Kristar's demise? What is that implying? It's not implying anything. It's questioning you. Well, I mean, it is implying that you did a bad thing, obviously. But why would you be like, what is he implying? Hello? I fear no one's home in Bronte's head, okay? Except for some horny little gremlin that's just sitting there. And Bronte's like, okay, who told you this? Perrin, you've always had an ear for rumors. I mean, so has everyone, it seems, in this frickin' court. So again, what are we talking about? She's like, I had nothing to do with my brother's death. And Perrin's like, okay, but you stood by and did nothing while he was being betrayed or whatever. And she's like, well, perhaps you should be asking yourself that question. Does your guilt prick you so deeply? And he's just like, me? You're desperate to try and shift the blame. And I'm like, well, I kind of agree with him, because we have had zero evidence other than her suspicions that he would kill his cousin. Again, I feel like it was pretty clear that he only hates her, not Kristar. So I don't really like, and she's just like, well, what about you? And I'm like, okay, but he brought up something that has had rumors, whether they're credible or not. We haven't heard jack shit rumors about him, so I don't understand this. She's like, no, I don't have to shift the blame where it already lies, and it lies on those with ambitions so great they forget their place in this court. And he's like, you accuse me, and he's laughing at her face. And he's like, you were always the favorite, Bronte. What lengths would you not go to keep your position? And that's a question I was asking. I genuinely thought that we were gonna learn some fuck shit about her, and I was excited. No, god damn it. And then Errol chimes in and he says, words are as slippery as stepstones during a rainfall. We only seek the truth, princess. This character has been talked up so much, and he barely says or does anything. And she says, then seek it, Lord Cabela. You will find no deceit here. My loyalty to my brother was steadfast, as you well know. And Errol says, then why wasn't his killer ever brought to justice? And Bronte says, his killer is dead, racked by guilt over the death of her lover. She took her own life. And Giselle is standing there thinking, does she really believe this? Because we know what the healer said. And Perrin says, that's not what I heard. I kind of like it. I wish he had been in more of this book. It's really disappointing. Very disappointing. I also wish that like the Countess had been a bigger deal. No one is a big enough deal in this book. And the Countess is finally had enough, and she's like, enough with the bickering. It's getting us nowhere. And Bronte's like, I agree. I had hoped that this meeting would be a chance to discuss what has happened and how we might move forward to the benefit of the kingdom. And Perrin's like, whose benefit? Yours? And then he's like, my claim to the throne. And she says, is nothing compared to mine. And my brother's murder is still fresh in people's minds. His tomb has only just been sealed. And he just interrupts her and says, I challenge your claim. I propose a trial by combat. And she thinks, fuck. And honestly, I'm kind of on his side. I can't even lie to you because like she has been so shady, mostly in her own head actually. And unfortunately, we've been forced to live there for multiple chapters. So I was kind of like, yeah, I agree with him. Like, to whose benefit? We already all agreed that she's probably not the best choice to rule because she wasn't prepared for any of it. Why should she be queen other than she thinks she earned it just by being born second? You know, like, I'm not getting it. And Bronte just says, she's like, oh shit. She's also like, very well. Who will fight for you, cousin? Would you take up arms like yourself? And everyone's like murmuring around because this is clearly like the hot goss of the century. And then Errol K. Bella, who has a cold calculating smile, by the way, don't worry about that. He says, I will stand for you, my lord. I'm gonna look up the word calculating now in this book. That's the one thing I like about e-reading is that you can just not Google, but search how many times a word is used. I spelled it wrong, so it would help if I... So calculating specifically is used 9 different times, and most of them are about Errol. And I wouldn't care if you had used it 9 times in this 300-page book, because I know there are only so many words in the English language. And sometimes you don't want to look up some ridiculous simile because that just makes you seem like you're trying to be smart or something. That's fine. I don't care. But when you use it repeatedly for the same character over and over and over and you don't come up with anything else to say or show, that's when it's annoying as shit to me. And Perrin's like, thanks, that's really generous of you. And then he's like, okay, cousin, what do you think about that? I tensed. If he won this fight, it wouldn't just be Perrin's victory, ... It would be his too. Yes, Giselle, thank you. Obviously, he's choosing to align himself with Perrin. Hello? What? She's like, but know this, should your champion lose ... it will be your loss too. Your claim will be void and you will be judged as a traitor to this court. Can you do that? Like, if... Okay, we're gonna get into legal crap for a second just because I find that kind of stuff in fantasy a little bit fascinating, particularly in monarchies. I know a lot of people don't find that interesting. However, I'm a nerd and I love fantasy, not for all the same reasons that everyone else does, obviously, because I find this kind of shit fascinating. If challenging your claim to the throne by trial by combat, obviously, is legal and perfectly acceptable to do, why do you get to punish the person for challenging you? Also, wouldn't that make the idea of challenging you kind of moot? Because like every single time someone challenges someone, there's like a certain % chance that they are going to lose and be charged with treason. It just feels absurd. Like, is it legal or is it not? But we have an entire field for this, by the way, which we learn pretty soon. So it must be fine, except that she's just gonna punish him for doing something that seems perfectly legal. I find that so interesting and odd. Hope you guys like my weird, like, fantasy rants. I don't know. I have my own interests. And Perrin's like, okay, who's gonna fight for you? Your pet mortal? Yeah, obviously. Who the fuck else is gonna fight for her? Everyone else is like afraid of her. And Bronte's just like, yes. And Perrin starts laughing and he's just like, this should be entertaining. And I'm kind of loving him, honestly. And Giselle and Errol lock eyes and she thinks that his pale gaze was far too calm for a man about to enter into a potentially deadly duel. Perhaps he's underestimated me. It was a mistake many had made before and one that often cost them dearly. So I would be interested to know, theoretically, why these fae would underestimate her other than she's a mortal. Like, I understand the mortal part, but I feel like the second part of this book has a lot of sexism and misogyny that is never explained by the culture and is really not supported by the first half of the book, so I don't really get it. Anyway, the trial by combat will commence at dawn tomorrow. Everyone gasps in the court and they're all like, ooh. They're whispering. Same, I would be like eating popcorn. I'd be like, because like, especially if you're a servant or something, like what difference does it make really about which one of these two royal assholes is in charge? Doesn't. Anyway, they exit the council chamber and then they have this little talk before the chapter's over. It's like the last paragraph. Giselle, she began, I wouldn't have agreed to this if I didn't have complete faith in you. I know, I replied firmly, and I won't let you down. A hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She reached up toward my face and her fingers brushed lightly against my jaw. I know you won't. Chapter 18, Giselle. It's dawn. No, it's not dawn yet. See, that's annoying because they have Dawn. Just one word at the top. See, this book. There are so many choices made. I don't know. But she's worried because at dawn she has to fight Errol. And she thinks about how she knows nothing about her opponent. And Bronte's like, what are you thinking about? And she's like, don't you just know? And she's like, your thoughts are chaotic. I'm like, okay. And she's like, are you worried? And thankfully Giselle isn't completely stupid. So she's like, what can you tell me about Errol, like as a warrior? What is he like? Errol is ... formidable, she confessed after a moment. He's not a warrior in the way you are. He fights with guile and cunning. He is ruthless in his pursuit of power. We're gonna look up cunning too because I'm interested. Again, I feel many words are repeated. Yeah, that's used multiple times. We'll let it slide. It's fine, I guess. And Giselle is kind of like, okay, but he has to have a weakness I can exploit. And Bronte says his pride. Errol is as proud as any fae could be. He would not refuse a challenge to his honor. And Giselle says, I may not understand any of this court stuff that's going on. And girl, it's because the author doesn't know what's going on either. She says, but I understand pride. And she's like, you will defeat him. No trickery or cunning will be able to prevent that. But Giselle is still worried. And she's like, I could still get killed. I'm not like you. And Bronte says, I won't let it happen. You will prevail because my claim is true and Perrin's is not. What the fuck does that have to do with winning a sword fight? I just gotta ask. Like, what does that have to do with jack shit? Nothing. And my other thing is that Perrin's claim isn't illegitimate. It's just not as strong as yours. But I think that while it's not as strong as yours in terms of blood relation, perhaps, I think in terms of who was actually prepared to rule, he has a stronger claim. I said what I said. Like, you weren't doing any of the things that you would need to do to learn how to do that. So therefore, I think his claim is better. I said what I said. And Giselle's like, hey, I know how this works. Like, if I lose, you lose. And if I'm killed, then your cause dies with me and Perrin will take the throne. And she's like, no pressure, huh? She's just like, Giselle, you won't lose. I'm like, why are we gonna cheat again? And she wants Giselle to get some rest because dawn will come sooner than either of us might wish for. And you should come to bed. I will give you good dreams and wake you before dawn. And, you know, they're kissing a bit, but she's like, is that a yes? Because clearly she wants to bang again. And Giselle says, no, princess, I only fuck after I've won the tournament. Okay. And she's like, bold words, Sir Raynor. I'm like, okay. Don't worry though, Giselle still wants her badly. I'm not gonna bother reading this. Don't worry though, Giselle is still really horny and wants her really bad, but I'm not gonna read this to you because that's not fair to all of you. You didn't sign up for that. Page break. So Giselle cannot sleep because, I mean, she might die tomorrow, so that makes sense. And she's also worried about Bronte because she's like, this is kind of like the perfect time for an assassin to try and murder her. And she thinks about how, like, a lot of the stuff she saw on TV in period dramas and that kind of stuff, which is kind of funny. However, she looks outside and there is something really suspicious. There's one shadow that's moving differently and she just thinks, fuck. She thinks that calling out for like the guards or something would do no good. And if someone's trying to sneak into Bronte's chamber, she wants to catch them in the act of it. And she thinks about how she's heinously poorly guarded and how she's tried to change Bronte's mind about that, but she won't listen. Again, I don't think that Bronte makes any smart decisions. So the assassin climbs up the window, gets through the window ledge, you know, and Giselle's like, there's no time, only action. And he doesn't really even notice her because he's focused on this, you know, he's focused on the murder. It kind of seems like he can vanish a little bit, which is odd, but he materializes in front of Bronte's bed. So she yells for Bronte and she's sprinting towards her and Bronte wakes up immediately, but the intruder turns toward Giselle, but not fast enough, and she collides with him, sends him to the floor. They start scuffling. There's a big scuffle, right? And she ends up stabbing her dagger into his side, and she's able to grab his dagger, throw it across the room, and she's trying to figure out who sent him because she has her blade pressed to his throat now. And also, Bronte decides to help. Suddenly, tendrils of smoke crept across the flagstones and wrapped around the intruder's wrist. She has really powerful magic, and I don't understand why she can't tell people about it, why she can't use it to her advantage. There's never really any good reason, but I just wanted to put it out there. He says he yields and she's like, answer who sent you. And Bronte's like, I think it's quite clear who sent him. And Giselle's like, Bronte, because, you know, Bronte just kind of flies off the fucking handle. And she's like, the question question isn't who sent him or why. Why isn't it? Because you suspect kind of multiple people at the same time, and I know that we now kind of get the vibe that Errol and Perrin are on each other's side, and the Countess obviously prefers Perrin, but you kind of suspect her of things separately, so I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. Like, you should want to know who wants to kill you. You should want to know that. Bronte decides to break his neck with the shadows, and that's what happens. Yay. And then she says he was under an enchantment. He did not even know what he was doing. So you murdered somebody who didn't even know they were doing that. Got it. Like, if he was still trying to kill you, I would get it. But this is at the point where it's not self-defense anymore. And then she says something that's literally crazy. Call the guard, she said. Tell them to take this to the Countess's door with my compliments. Do it now, she commanded. Again, we are just deciding we think someone did it because I'm unhappy with them, because I suspect them, because I decided. But there hasn't been any concrete evidence against any of the three people we're supposed to suspect. I feel like we have much more material to use against Bronte than we do against literally anyone else. So it's really dumb. Despite clearly not wanting to do that, Giselle says, hey, take that body to the Countess's door, please. And they kind of freeze a little bit, and then she's like, do it. And they're like, okay, damn. But she does think to herself, there was no telling what the fallout from this action would be. Bronte would be striking a blow and delivering the corpse to the Countess, but it was a defensive blow, nothing more. Except that if she didn't do it, that's kind of a crazy declaration of, I want to fist fight you in the street because I think you're awful. But like, again, where's the proof? Where's the proof? I know that this is like a magical fake court, and it's not like how the US is supposed to be, where you're supposed to, you know, be innocent until proven guilty, where you're supposed to have rights. But at the same time, these are very high-ranking people in this court that she has zero evidence against. And she's just having bodies delivered to their fucking front door. That's absurd. After they're gone, Giselle asks if Bronte recognized his face, and she's like, no, but I recognize the spell that bound him. An enchantment? She shook her head, and a look of disdain passed over her hauntingly beautiful features. No, a potion, a poison that opens the mind to coercion and control, a simple concoction that might be purchased from any apothecary in the market. Okay, so number one, do we learn anything else about potions in this? No. And that was one of my gripes with Cursed by Malignant Magic, is that we just drop potions, do nothing with them. At least in this book, enchantments were like the only form of magic, basically. So if it was just an enchantment, that's fine. But we're getting into potions, which is odd. But the part that pisses me off and is the most confusing is that it's considered simple and anyone can fucking buy those from the apothecary at the market. Number one, how can anyone be held accountable for crimes that they do under this coercion potion that anyone can have? Why isn't this heavily regulated? Why doesn't the crown pretty much have like exclusive access to this? This doesn't make any fucking sense. You're telling me any asshole can just go buy this and everyone's fine with it until someone tries to assassinate the princess? What? Anyway, she's like, okay, Giselle, we have a few hours before dawn. Will you sleep? And she's like, no. Like, well, that's fair. And Bronte is like, I will sit with you until it's time then. They just sit in silence until the end of the chapter. Also, I will just say, you know what's something really suspicious to me? I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I know that sometimes plot ideas just kind of overlap, so I promise I'm not accusing of anything. But some of these plot points are really similar to my favorite Locked Tomb fanfic, and I thought that was bonkers. It's not done nearly as well as that fanfic. That fanfic could literally, in my opinion, be in the actual Locked Tomb universe. Like, for real. Like, the writing style was like so similar. It was really good. Anyway, chapter 19, Bronte. They were announcing that, you know, it's time. The Countess had sent no word that she had received my gift that had surprised me, but it shouldn't have. The Countess was sly, cunning. It was how she had survived life at court for so long. I would pay for the threat I had delivered to her door, but she should have known better to send an assassin from the marketplace. Again, we're making a ton of assumptions, because even if we believe you about all the people who want you dead, like the number, that's still 3 people. Why are you only focusing on one. Whatever. Don't worry though about her looking forward to the battle a little bit. It's like, and I for one was looking forward to watching Errol K. Bella's blood seep into the dark earth of the eternal forest. Why? Here's my problem with Errol's character as a whole. It's pointless. They keep telling us that he's cunning, that he's sly, that he's only out for himself. Do we see any of that aside from him just deciding to be Perrin's champion? No. What is he doing? Not much. Like, we keep saying it, but to me it didn't even feel like he was only out for himself. It felt very contradictory because he volunteered to be Perrin's duelist. If he was only out for himself, why the fuck would he do that? Because there's a high chance, even if you believe that being immortal makes you weaker, that you might potentially just die. Why would you do that if you're only out for yourself? That's something I don't understand about how that character's written. And it's because he's not actually important, even though we keep making him out to be. And it's infuriating because he could have been something. You know? Anyway, don't worry. Bronte's really excited about how Giselle looks right now. Something stirred in my chest to see her wear my crest on her tunic. She was mine, fighting to protect my claim to the crown I had been born to. Okay, thank you. You think she's hot, we get it. And you want her to be yours. Very possessive in here. I honestly don't actually mind possessiveness, just in case any of you decide to accuse me of anything. I just hate it when it's done in this very hackneyed, lazy way. Everyone's here. The gang's all here, okay? Perrin arrives last, and he's been drinking, and he apparently smells of the perfume of the brothel quarter. Okay, number one, there's a brothel quarter? Crazy. But also, what does it matter if he was drinking and he went to the whorehouse? He's not dueling. If they're all legal, that's his damn right. Anyway, she's staring at Errol, the Countess, and Perrin. I hated them with the heat of 1,000 funeral pyres. That's a lot, but all right. Anyway, the Countess is like, all right, let's start. And Bronte thinks, whatever happened here, someone's gonna die. Okay, yeah, I figured. I kind of thought it was a Game of Thrones situation where it's to the death, but maybe not, I guess. And then because we love repeating ourselves because we think readers are inherently stupid idiots, Bronte is like, remember what I told you about Errol? And then Giselle is like, pride. Yeah, I know it's tight. We already went over this, I feel like, pretty thoroughly. Why do we have to do it again? And Giselle asks if she can wear Bronte's favor. And Bronte says, you have more than my favor. And then they kiss in front of everybody and everyone's murmuring about it. And I feel like this is the hot goss. And Giselle says, really fucking loud, I fight for your honor, princess, long may you reign. I mean, she's not reigning over anything yet, so okay. And this gives Bronte a little bit of pleasure about all the pageantry. I wish you would give us some pageantry. I wish you would try, but no. Anyway, they start fighting, sword fighting. Hooray. This is something I don't understand, so let's go with this, okay? I hope you're not expecting me to go easy on you because you're a woman, Errol sneered, and immortal. So what is with the random gendered sexist shit? Because I was never under the impression, especially in the first half of the book, that they didn't want Bronte to be the ruler because she's a woman. I always got the impression that it's because she's deeply unqualified. That's what I thought. And if you're going to set up misogyny as part of the villainry, you should have done that earlier. I don't understand this. But anyway, Giselle's like, I wouldn't dream of it. Also, remember when I talked about the Fae warriors who were women thing? Because Bronte had said that. Would Errol say that to a woman who's fae? What is the misogyny like here, if there is any? We don't know. So, but Giselle's like, don't worry, I'm not gonna go easy on you either. Fight, 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 fight. I'm not gonna describe sword things to you that I can't possibly explain, but she's winning. Errol's getting frustrated. He says, your heart isn't in this fight, Sir Raynor. You can't protect her forever, and if you do prevail, what will you do next? Do you really think our fair princess will return you to your mortal world and your mundane existence? I think that's a great fucking point. I kind of wish it had been brought up outside of battle a little bit, because I think she really should have thought about that for a minute, because we know from Bronte's thoughts that she doesn't want to let her go. This could have been really interesting, and instead it's not. And Giselle's just like, if you're trying to psych me out, you have to try harder. They keep going. With every lunge and riposte, Giselle proved that Errol might have been an effective courtier. He was a terrible champion. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't really know why he volunteered for this. Perrin starts shouting and is like, you have to get to first blood, like, get her. And then Errol's trying really hard, says his movement's erratic like the flight of a butterfly caught in a storm. Do you guys know how much butterflies weigh? Because, like, I guess I'm imagining a butterfly trying to fly through a hurricane, and that wouldn't work. But, like, water isn't great for butterflies either. Like, liquid isn't. So I don't understand what in the hell we're talking about. Hi, babies. So Giselle actually draws first blood on Errol because, as we've established, he's not good at this. So this is kind of a boring fight, can't lie. She's trying to get him to yield, but he won't, obviously. But Errol's pride wouldn't let him accept defeat. With a wild cry, he pulled a long knife from his belt and charged at her. Giselle drew back her sword and struck not a fatal blow, but one that would incapacitate him. He crumbled onto his knees before her, clutching his bleeding side. His gray eyes looked up at Giselle in disbelief. Except then the Countess is like, so this is a fight to the death, dumbasses. So you have to, like, actually kill him. And Giselle's like, I have never killed anybody. And the Countess instead just looks at Bronte and is like, hey, your champion's work's not done. She's got to actually win. And Bronte is like, hey, you got to do it. You must. So Perrin starts yelling at Errol to be like, get up. You're shaming your name. You're shaming mine. Also, this is immortal. The fuck? But Errol is not okay after getting his ass beat. So he tries again. And Giselle thinks, I couldn't help but admire his final display of defiance. Why? We'll talk about it in a second. She kills him. Yeah. And he just crumbles to the ground and he's dead. So my big complaint now that Errol is dead and we can just talk about him and we probably won't bring him up again is this makes no sense for his character. I don't understand why he was willing, if he's clearly cunning and sly and in it for himself, has his own motives that are difficult to discern. I cannot understand why he would fucking risk his own life, which ended up killing him, for someone else. When I think of someone who's sly and cunning and only in it for themselves, I think of someone who knows how to play both fields. I think of somebody who would be willing to align themselves with Bronte and Perrin, depending on who's doing better and is this better for me. So I don't fucking understand why he did this. He was a useless character. He hardly did anything at all. We were supposed to be led to believe from the beginning that he had dubious motives that no one could fucking figure out. And she was like, yeah, maybe he could be an ally. But there was nothing after her just saying that proved that in the slightest. Because after that, he was always being like, hey, Perrin wants to see you. Perrin, I'm now gonna fight for Perrin. It doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe if we had framed this as Perrin has the entire fucking court on his side now, not just like some of the council members. And not only is Errol so arrogant and sure that this is just in the bag, but this is going to give him the best possible position when Perrin is king, maybe I could forgive it. I still would feel like it wasn't exactly in character, but I could forgive it. But this shit is stupid. Anyway, Perrin is angry and feels like shit, obviously, and Errol's fucking dead. And Giselle says, Errol K. Bella, you have been found guilty of treason against the Autumn Court and your princess. For that, there can only be one punishment. Except, I thought we said that Perrin was going to be the one who was deemed traitorous. Errol just fought for him, which is picking sides, sure. But what? Also, Giselle doesn't have the fucking authority to say that. That was literally just for the pageantry of this shit. Anyway, Bronte's excited and the Countess looks kind of all resigned or whatever. She's all like, cousin, your schemes end here. I feel like he only had one scheme, which was to get the throne. And I'm right because I read the entire book. So like, it's so stupid. Anyway, she is banishing him to the Winterlands, which we have heard nothing about. And we're now at 70% through this book. So that's his penance, banishment. Apparently it's a place where the Fey magic grows thin, but again, what does that even mean? Who lives there? What goes on there? What's up other than it's fucking winter? You know? I don't get it here. She's like, go, and if you're still in this city after nightfall, you will have to face the same fate as your champion. And he's angry, but he's gonna do it. And she's like, see that he leaves without delay to the guards. She's super excited because she won and the crown's hers. Hooray. And there's applause, even for Giselle or whatever, but I don't know how much these courtiers actually give a shit about any of this. And then the earth swallows up Errol, okay? And Bronte says, so perish all traitors to the crown, and she looks a little bit at the Countess, but the Countess doesn't seem like she gives a shit. Anyway, she goes, she tells Giselle she's remarkable. She's like, let's return to the palace. You earned some rest. But Giselle's obviously fucking hurt because it's that trope. And she has like blood coming out of her side and she's in pain and she says, I need help and like take her to a healer now. And she should be just mostly worried about, you know, her lover. But instead, what she mainly thinks about is what will it mean for me if she dies, like crown wise? What will that mean? And I'm like, are you serious? Anyway, the guards take him and she's just like, she's resilient, she'll survive. The alternative is unthinkable. But then she goes right back to thinking about how this will be a sign that the Autumn Court can't ignore and they won't be okay with it, blah 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 blah. I fucking hate it. And she announces to the crowd, let us not forget what has happened today. Justice has been served upon the enemies of the crown. Sure, okay, if you say so. Again, where are all these people who allegedly were loyal to the crown but not who wears it? Because obviously those people in the crowd don't care, but it's also implied that there are people who do give a shit. Where are all the people who give a shit, who are like, wow, she is not trained enough to be queen. I want Perrin to do it. Like, I don't understand this. And we end the chapter with her thinking, live, don't abandon me. Okay, chapter 20, Giselle. She wakes up, not great. There's a lot of pain. The healer is like, hey, chill. But she's still trying to get up. And as she's getting up, she's like, wait a minute, we never actually looked into Lurie's death. I'm like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I just feel like it's obvious that there are many pieces to this, that there's obviously multiple players involved, that they just don't think about them. They're all too busy thinking about them individually to think about what they might be doing either together or like in tandem or just like what might work out well for them because someone else did something else. Like, it doesn't, there was no time for rest or recuperation when deceit festered within these walls. Too many had died since I had come here, ... Kristar's death had forced Bronte to seek out a champion. Lurie's death had brought Perrin's challenge. The challenge had led to the death of the unknown assassin, and now I was responsible for Errol's death, and Perrin had been sent to a certain death in the south. Questions circled in my mind like carrion birds over a field of corpses. You just reiterated to us everyone who has died on page that we know is dead. We're not stupid. You don't have to say that. We know. You know what would have been shorter and not made me feel like you think I'm stupid? I thought a lot about all the people who have died. Like, and she actually has other good questions like who sent the assassin? What would happen if the Countess knew of Bronte's magic? Like, she seems so determined to keep it a secret. Like, why is Bronte so certain it's the Countess who's to blame for all of this? And like, why would she do all that? Did she want the crown for herself? It doesn't make sense. And I agree, but it's dumb as fuck. And she's also like, doubt clouded my thoughts as I considered my alliance with Bronte. I don't feel like you're actually spending that much time considering it because you are questioning her motives, but then you're going, but she would never do that. You hardly know her. How do you know that? How do you know that? Like, it's so stupid. But she's like, how long have I been out? It's been another 4 days, because apparently that's how long she gets knocked out for every time. And she's getting up even though they're like, hey, you need to stay down. Your wounds are still fresh. And she's like, hey, I can't just lay here, stitch me up and I'm gonna go. And the healer's like, you need time to heal and the coronation can proceed without you for 1 day. She's like, the coronation? She's like, yeah, the princess is gonna take the throne as it's meant to be. Giselle starts freaking out because she's like, what if there's another assassin? Like, what are we gonna do about that? And she says, no, I need to go speak with her. And the healer's like, I understand you're loyal to her, but you need to rest. And she's like, then bring her here because I need to talk to her. And the healer's like, I'll pass on a message, but you should rest, like drink this, it'll help with the pain. And she's like, no, I don't want drugs. And I'm like, okay, weirdo. And she's just like, no thanks, pushes the hand away. And she's like, okay, you're stubborn, and if you have to rise, at least let me help you. And she helps Giselle up. She says, please just keep this potion because it will help you sleep later, and promise you'll return if the pain is unbearable. And she says, I promise. And she's like, I'm pretty sure we both know that I'm not coming back no matter what. And I'm like, okay. So she leaves and the servants are like carrying armfuls of garland, like everyone's getting ready for the big coronation. And then she hears more gossiping from some servants saying that Mardove had her hand in this and Lurie paid the price, and they're like, shush, like not here if anyone knew knew we were even thinking it. And I don't know. And then Giselle has the thought of like, oh, it seems like everybody knows that they were banging. So was Bronte lying to me when she said she didn't know they were banging? Which is a great question. Unfortunately, the answer is stupid. So she's in pain, but she's like, I gotta go. So she goes to the Countess's chambers first for some fucking reason. I don't know why we keep going to her like we believe she's gonna tell the truth. Doesn't make any fucking sense. And the Countess is like, oh, hey, wondered when you would wake. And she's like, or if I would. And the Countess is like, maybe. Like, what do you need? It's like, I want to talk about fucking Lurie. And she's like, again with the fucking maid. I'm with her. I'm frustrated. She's like, it was tragic. Okay. But, you know, people among our kind taking their own lives. It's not very common, but I don't understand how this concerns you or me. I wouldn't have mentioned that it's not very common among our kind if I was being actually sneaky and sly and cunning, but these characters are none of those things. She takes a wild stab of like, she knew something and she knew that you had involvement with the prince's death and that's why she was killed. And this pisses off the Countess. And she's like, accusations without proof are a dangerous game, Sir Raynor. You may be the princess's champion, but even you should tread carefully. You overstep your role here. I had no hand in Lurie's unfortunate demise. Unfortunate, I pressed, or inconvenient? She was pregnant with the prince's child. She threatened everything you had hoped would be parents. And then the Countess is like, these are baseless accusations. Like, it's not your place to seek justice for affairs of this court. You're here to serve the princess, and your task is almost over, by the way, and she'll have no need for you. And when your usefulness is at an end, you will be cast aside like so many others before you. And I kind of think she's fucking right. But this book is stupid, so of course she isn't. I was under no illusions as to the nature of our relationship. She was using me, but I was using her too. Are you really? I pushed the whispered thought aside. Yeah, I think only one of you is using the other. So, and the Countess is like, yeah, you're very dedicated to that girl, sure. And she's like, I came here for answers. And she's like, did you find him? And she's like, no, but I will. She's like, you knew about Lurie and the prince, do you deny it? And she's like, and if I do not? She's like, and Perrin, you favored him over the princess to succeed the throne, do you deny that? And she says, no. So she's being like honest, okay? She's like, were you willing to secure Perrin's claim to the throne? She's like, you're treading some dangerous ground with your fucking assumptions. She's like, maybe, but I think it's more dangerous not to question. I'm like, I don't know about that. I think actually finding out the real truth might be more important, but what do I know? She's like, your loyalty to the princess is commendable, but caution will serve you better than recklessness. I think she's given some genuine advice a little bit. I don't know. She's like, maybe so, but I think recklessness might be what's needed to prevent another unnecessary tragedy. And I'm just like, I don't think that's true, especially if you're being reckless with someone who's not actually doing anything. Just saying. And she's like, you're either braver than I thought or you're more foolish. Giselle's like, I've been called both. Did you have something to do with his death though? She asks. And she's like, excuse you. She says, I am not responsible for the prince's untimely demise. She stated with a finality that could only be the truth. So if she didn't have anything to do with it, I don't know why she's been dancing around it. I don't know why you wouldn't just say repeatedly, I didn't do anything to the prince. And she's like, okay, then who is responsible? The Countess says, I don't know who killed the prince, but I can assure you if I did, they would not go unpunished. Because again, her character was written to have loved Prince Kristar, and she advised him just not to marry Lurie, so I don't understand why we think immediately that she's the guilty party. And Giselle realizes that she really doesn't know who killed the prince. Yeah, no shit. She's like, you knew about her and the prince though, you were aware she was pregnant. We keep going over the same fucking idiocy. She says, I was, before you ask, I did not give the order for her death. Lurie was unwittingly caught up in a game she didn't fully comprehend, which is fair. Yeah. And then Giselle's like, do you think that absolves you? I'm like, of what? If she didn't order for Lurie to die, and if she didn't order for the prince to die, what the fuck does that have to do with it? Like, why does she need to be absolved of anything if she didn't do anything? And she's like, no, it's just supposed to make you understand. And I'm like, well, yeah, because she doesn't need to be absolved. But all right. She's just like, understand what? And she's like, understand the dynamics of this court, deceit, allegiances, betrayal. All of it is a part of this world, as are the tragedies that result from them. But using it as an excuse for murder, I am not excusing anything. She cut in, fixing me with a steely gaze. I am merely helping you see things as they are. And then she says, perhaps we are more alike than you thought, Sir Raynor.
We are sisters, you and I.
And Sir Raynor is like, how so? And she's like, we both seek justice, although our methods very, like, greatly. And Giselle says, no, there's a difference between seeking justice and carelessly wielding power. And she says, you're still thinking like a mortal, Sir Raynor. I believe you may leave me now. And I still do not understand why we think she's wielding power recklessly if she didn't do any of the fucking things you just accused her of doing. Stupid as all get out. Anyway, she leaves and she's like, well, I have to go talk to Bronte. Chapter 21, Giselle. So she makes her way through to go talk to the goddamn princess. And there are 4 guards at her door now protecting her, which she's like, okay, that's good at least. But she is actually starting to get some knots in her stomach about Bronte becoming queen. I would too, because she's really sus. And Bronte's like, oh my god, yay. And she's like, I heard about your stubbornness with the healers. Like, hi. And she's like, let my champion through. And she's wearing a beautiful black velvet gown that's embroidered with leaves and shit. And the gown's amazing. I think we have more pressing problems. I couldn't push away the thought of what it would be like to peel that exquisite fabric from her long limbs when it was all over so I could claim her for my own. But she wasn't mine. She could never be mine. She's like, how are you feeling? And she's like, I'm fine. And she's like, you're a liar. And then she throws out that potion. She's like, you won't be taking this because it will dull your wits and the pain will return even worse than before when you wake up from this. And she's like, oh, so that's nice of her. She tells her to lie down and then she literally heals the wound with her crazy magic. Again, why can't the magic be shared or like talked about? I don't know. There's never a good fucking reason given. And she just explains that she couldn't do it with the court watching. She's like, because if they knew, and they're like, if they knew you could use magic, she's like, if they knew it would not be welcomed. And they're like, don't all of your kind have magic? Not like this. Our people draw power from this realm, but what I have, they would not understand. Except it doesn't get explained why. It doesn't get explained why. They're calling for a bath and food and shit. And Bronte says, I was afraid you wouldn't wake before the coronation, but I'm very pleased that you are stubborn as I expected you to be. Mortals are so unpredictable. Sure. I think she's very predictable. I think every character in here is kind of predictable. And even like an old injury she had on her shoulder is healed now, which is great. Hooray. And then Bronte is complimenting her again, saying she's like really remarkable, blah, 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 blah. But Bronte admits that she was worried because his weapon was also Fae made and she doesn't know what would happen to human flesh. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's like another giant red flag because you should have told her that. She's like, I had something made for you and it's like commissioned new chainmail, black and copper. And she looks all shy and Giselle thinks, I've never wanted her so fiercely. Okay, if you say so. And she's like, are you asking me to stand beside you at the coronation? And she's just like, yeah. And she's like, I will. And I'm like, okay, nice, I guess. And then we get back to the like, you said like before the duel that you would fuck me if you won, and you won. So she's like, you won me. And then there's just sex. She makes her beg. We call something her forbidden entrance, which I don't like. And then also there's butt stuff, but they call it her tight channel. Just call it her butthole. Just call it something else, like her butt or what. I don't want to, whatever. It's all fingering, by the way. And then there is some eating out. Hooray. And everyone gets off. Hooray. But then after the satisfaction, Giselle thinks she would be queen. She would be a queen soon. And what would I be? As soon as the crown was placed upon her head, the spell that bound me to her, that bound me to this realm, would be broken. But now I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave. Yeah, that's maybe something you should think about, but we don't think about it nearly enough. Chapter 22, Bronte. They've been cuddling, but she's worried for a different reason. She wants her to stay, but there might be some problems. No matter how careful my advisors had been, I had heard their whispers. A princess with a human pet, an oddity, an abomination. They were afraid of her now. No one had expected that she would defeat Errol Cabela in the duel, my cousin least of all. But Errol was dead. The forest had taken his corpse, and my cousin's footsteps led him toward the southern snows from which he would never return. I think that her priorities are whack. I think they always have been. I don't understand. She's encouraging Bronte. I don't care. And she brings up, Bronte does, Countess Mardub again. But she's like, oh, you went to see her. You didn't come directly to me after the healing incident. And she's like, are you reading my thoughts? And she's like, no, I want you to tell me. She explains, you know, all the stuff she learned. Bronte is like, it doesn't make sense. Like, who would wish to murder her? She was a servant. And Giselle brings up that, again, again, she was a prince's lover. She was gonna have his baby. And Bronte's like, that does not make her anything. Her death was regrettable, and I hope that the Countess has been sufficiently humbled by the crumbling of her plans. And Giselle says, I don't think she had any plans. And she's like, oh? She's like, I think she supported Perrin, but I don't think she had anything to do with Lurie's death. She admitted that she knew about the prince's affection for her, but she told me that she didn't order Lurie's death. And Bronte gets angry immediately, and she's like, you believe her? She's like, I do. Like, Giselle's like, I do. And why? She's like, I don't understand your politics, but I don't think she had anything to gain. She's not in line for the throne, and there would be no benefit for her. So I think if Lurie had died before Christar, that we could make the argument that she did it because she was getting rid of the problem. However, that's not how the order went. So I think everyone is being an idiot. And then Giselle brings up like, aren't you curious who sent the assassin? Like, no one's claimed him. No one's taking credit for this. I mean, he wasn't successful, so why would you take credit? I don't get that. He could have been sent by any faction that opposes the crown, I said casually. He was a poor choice. Whoever hired him did not pay much for his services. And Giselle's like, is that all you found out? Again, who are the factions that oppose the crown? This is the first time we're hearing about them. 84% in. 84% in. What are we talking about? Anyway, everyone's all dressed. They look great. And they kiss. Hooray. When she pulled away, I was breathless and my pussy throbbed with need. You need to keep that to yourself, girl. And then she asked to braid Giselle's hair because it looks like a haystack, allegedly. So she does it. Giselle's like, you're awfully quiet after a while. And she's like, am I? And she's just like braiding. So I don't understand what that matters. She's like, I can feel you worrying. Like, I am concerned. The coronation is sure to draw political vermin out from their hiding places. I don't want anything to happen to you. Again, we just learned about whatever secret political vermin that are against the actual crown instead of just her. So I don't understand this. And Giselle's like, will your reign be difficult? And she's like, I think that this will be difficult. My father was more concerned with preparing Christar for rule than me. Which doesn't make any sense because he had the whole heir in the spare and you didn't even train the spare. But whatever. And she's like, what were you prepared for? And she's like, marriage, of course, a political alliance that would secure the prosperity of the kingdom and the bonds between the other Fae courts. Who are the other Fae courts? We don't know. And she's like, you sound bitter. She's like, how could I be anything else? Again, this random weird misogyny with the marriage stuff and some of the other shit came out of nowhere. Because again, for like the first 50% almost, there was very little about misogyny except for what Giselle had experienced in the mortal realm. So now we're talking about all of this misogyny that I didn't even know existed in the Fae realm, and it's annoying. And Giselle's like, are you prepared for ruling at all? And she's like, I don't know. Again, why is she becoming queen then? Stupid as hell. She's like, but I have you. And then she thinks again. The spell that bound Giselle to this realm would soon be fulfilled, and when its magic faded, her regard for me would fade too. Would she think that I had been using her, manipulating her? Had I done so? Yes, you're welcome. Anyway, she's now concerned about all the fucking people who are dead, but again, she's also like, what about Countess Mardove? I'm like, this is so stupid. And she brings it up again to Giselle. I've been thinking about Countess Mardove, and she's like, thinking or worrying. Both. And she's like, what if she contests my crowning? And Giselle's like, why would she? You said that she was your father's trusted advisor. I'm sure she mourned for your brother's death. She's like, she did, quite convincingly. But was that mourning genuine, or was it simply an act to cover her real intentions? Even slimy people have people they care about. So I don't understand why you think that the grief would be false. Doesn't make any sense. And Giselle asks if she has a claim, and Bronte doesn't answer because it's time to go to the coronation. She thinks about her dad and Christar. I'll read it. What would my father say if he could see me here now, my handsome, infuriating father? And Christar, I was taking the throne that had been meant for him. What might he say? But what do you care what the dead have to say? The whisper was loud in my ears, and I spun around to see who had spoken. There was only Giselle behind me and expressionless guards around me. And Giselle's like, are you all right? Again, I feel like we barely heard anything about her dad, so I don't know why we're talking about him all of a sudden. And she gets up there and she thinks like Christar would have relished this moment, but Christar was dead, so now it's my turn. I'm like, yeah, we know. Thank you. Then we have Lord Jexa, who is one of the elders of the court, who we really haven't heard about at all. And he starts announcing the whole coronation thing. And then we learn some insane information, okay? He stumbled over a few of his words, and I could tell that the ancient words had been altered to reflect the fact that I was not the eldest son of our previous king, ... I was the second child, the first daughter of a traitor of a mother. Why are we only now hearing about her mother? 87% through. What did her mother do? How did that affect protect her and her claim to the throne? We never find out. Never. And it makes me think of Extasia, where there is a large plot about her mom being a traitor to their like crazy cult religion, and that actually mattered. This doesn't. And it's infuriating to just drop random character lore out of the sky. Anyway, they're about to put the crown on her head, and they see someone moving in the crowd, and Giselle's trying to lunge forward, but it doesn't matter. They tried to hit her with a crossbow, but they hit Lord Jexa, and he dies. And she screams for Giselle, and the chapter ends. Chapter 23, Giselle. We go back a little bit in time with her looking around at the coronation. I don't care. And she finds a man who looks a little bit off, and he looks angry. And I'm like, okay, so I don't know why we weren't doing something faster, but okay. And she adjusts the grip on her dagger as she's watching him. And she tries to stop the guy, but it's too late, and he's aiming it at Bronte. And I guess Lord Jexa just got in the way, but it wasn't credibly apparent. But Giselle finally gets to that guy. She drives him to the floor, and she's asking why he did it. He's like insulting her, and he's also like, does it even matter? I failed. And then he dies because he had poison and it activated or whatever. He chewed it, whatever. And he's dead. He's dead now. And the Countess is like, clear the room, secure the premises, protect the queen. And Bronte yells Giselle, and she's like trying to get to her, and she's like, let me through. And they let her through, and they get to each other, and they hold hands. And then they are led to Bronte's grandfather's old room, which is very much decorated, kind of like a peasant place, because he wasn't royalty apparently. Do we learn anything about that? No. But she thanks Giselle for protecting her, and Giselle's like, I did what any champion would do. And Bronte's like, no, you've proven time and again that it's more than just duty to you. Yeah, okay, if you say so. The captain of the guard comes, and he says that you'll be safe here, your majesty. There will be 2 guards at the door, and your champion will be here, obviously. And she's like, thank you. I put my trust in you, captain. I don't know why, because they let that very obviously sketchy guy into the coronation, so I don't know why we're trusting anyone, but okay. And Giselle's like, I'm sorry, I really should have acted sooner. And she's like, you did everything that you could do, more than anyone else. You're the bravest person I know. And they're like, let's drink, but it's like cheap wine that was her grandpa's. And Bronte's like, this is disgusting. And Giselle's like, actually, I like this. Your grandpa had good wine taste. Again, we learned that he was a commoner and he wasn't born a king. How did he become king? I do not know. Who was royalty before this? We don't know. We don't learn anything about this fucking fantasy world, I swear to God. And, you know, Giselle kind of makes a joke about like what she would do on a date back home. And then she's like, it seemed like such an impossible thing, a date with a fey princess. No, she was a queen now. I definitely wouldn't be taking her to Dimitri's for pizza and a carafe of terrible wine before we went bowling. Had that even been my life? I feel like you have moved far past dating. I don't really think you need to worry about it. And Bronte kind of judges the room again, but it doesn't really even matter. And they're cuddling even though they're still covered in blood. Chapter 24, Giselle. So suddenly there's movement outside the door, and there's a knock, and Giselle rushes to open it, and Countess Mardov is there. And she's also spattered with blood because she was up on the days for the coronation. And she says, Your Majesty, I'm relieved to see you're safe. What are you even doing? And they're like, we're drinking. She's like, you have to go back to your chambers. And they're like, what happened? She's like, it was an assassin, obviously. No shit. Hello? But you must not fear, Majesty. Your champion could have told you that the rebel is dead. Bronte's like, rebel? How could you know? And she says he carried one of their coins, a marker to show his allegiance. Like, allegiance to who? And the Countess is like, does it matter? It does. An assassin almost took my life on the night before the challenge that Perrin brought against me. The criminal's corpse was brought to your door so you would know that he failed. I recall that a corpse was found outside my chambers, but I rejoice in your Majesty's continued health and safety. I had nothing to do with the attack nor this one. And she says, but I know him. I had hoped he would see his way to departing the kingdom as he had been told, but it seems that he had other ideas. So the guy who's behind all of this, literally all of this, is Lurie's brother, who is associated with a rebel group we did not hear about until 91% through the fucking book. What do you mean a rebel group exists and she didn't list them as one of the fucking suspects of people who want her dead. Hello? Who are we talking to? This is absurd. This is insanity. Apparently Lurie's brother had come looking for her, but she was under Kristar's protection, and he wouldn't have been given permission to even see her, which is quite ridiculous. And he had apparently come to the gates several times, but each time he was turned away. Yeah, he was probably deeply upset that his sister, who is of working class, was being exploited by royalty who would never value her nor marry her. I said what I said. The Countess had brought his message to Lurie, and she was really upset and begged to be allowed to see her brother and just speak to him so that she can send him away. And Bronte's like, but he didn't go away. And whatever she had said to him wasn't enough, and now Lurie's dead. He apparently murdered his own sister, and the Countess believes that he had a hand in the prince's murder also. And Bronte gasps. Yeah, it is surprising because who the fuck are these people? And the Countess is like, you know I loved your brother. This news breaks my heart as much as yours. And then Bronte is pissed and she's like, you're to blame. You allowed this person to seep into the court, which you claim to love so much, and you allowed this to happen. You knew my brother was bedding a common girl, and you knew that she had connections to rebels in the city. How would she know that? We jumped to a crazy amount of conclusions. A crazy amount. She's like, how dare you stand before me with the blood of a loyal member of the court on your gown when you are as guilty as the man who spilled it. I don't see how that's possible. I don't see how that's possible. And also, if she knew about Lurie's connection, but we've established that she actually did care about Kristar, why wouldn't she talk to him about Lurie's rebel connections? I don't understand that. And she's like, how much did you know, Countess? She's like, I beg your pardon. And she's like, you heard me. Did you know they were planning to kill the princess? And she's like, of course not. Like, had I known such a heinous plot was being hatched, I would have put an end to it immediately. Yet you stood by while she was in danger. You didn't think it might be pertinent to mention that Lurie's brother had been coming to see her and that he was a known rebel. I thought Lurie had convinced him to leave, as she had promised. She swore she would handle it. Everyone's like, look how that turned out. I don't understand this. This is one of the dumbest ways this could have gone. So you're telling me the Countess barely had any actual connection to any of the deaths we're fucking talking about. Perrin had no connections, and Errol also had zero. That's how you decide to end this book. This is fucking dumb. Anyway, she's like, I trusted you with my life. No, you didn't. And she's like, you betrayed us. You betrayed my father's memory, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you don't get to plead your case. And she also exiles her to where she sent Perrin. And she's like, you have given nothing to this court that did not benefit you in return. Get out of my sight. Well, I think I'm not even gonna argue. This is dumb as fuck. But she's like, okie doke. And then Giselle's like, are you okay? And she's like, I'll survive. And she's like, I guess that answered our questions. I suppose it does. Does it seem too simple? Maybe, but isn't the simple answer usually the right one? Is this a simple answer? I think this is a dumb as shit answer. Anyway, they're like, Lurie's brother was behind Kristar's death. I don't understand it. He was a great warrior. And she's like, even warriors have to sleep. And Lurie, her own brother, murdered her to what? To save their family from the shame of her bearing a bastard child to a prince? Princess let out a groan. That would do it. Actually, that doesn't really resonate with me at all, because I feel like a lot of people saw their relatives being a mistress of royalty as something they could use to their advantage to get money, status, anything. But instead we're just like, well, yeah, this is it. And I'm like, why are we like this? And she's like, I need to take control. The court is in chaos. There's no order, no sense of security. It's time things change. These rebels, they must be put down. I need to secure the kingdom. These rebels we didn't know about until 91% into the book. Okay. She's like, anyway, we need to actually coordinate me. Page break. So she decides to get coordinated. She stays in the blood-covered dress because she wants everyone to see. And they have a different elderly lord do the coordinating and just finish it or whatever. She was the Autumn Queen now, and our bond had been severed, but I didn't feel any different. The sword on my hip still pulsed with magic. My fingers still itched to touch her. Maybe there was more that had been done, magic words or something that had been said, that had to be said to free me from this oath. Anyway, Bronte's first act as queen is to vow that she'll cleanse the realm of the rebel forces that seek to interrupt our way of life, and she gives some lord the sacred duty of carrying that out, which is like, oh. Also, like, what do the rebels actually want? I don't know. Just for Bronte to be dead, I guess. I don't know. And she raises up her champion to a knight of the Autumn Court, and I don't understand what the difference is, but okay. And they do a whole pledging, blah, blah, blah. And then they like cut Giselle's hand. It's some kind of weird blood oath, I don't know, to make her an Autumn Knight. And then she's like, let the festivities begin. Chapter 25, Bronte. So everyone's partying, hooray. And she doesn't want to let Giselle go. She's not happy about the idea. They kiss. Hooray. I don't know. But Giselle says, I can't stay here. And Bronte, surprisingly, is like, to the sacred lake then, even though she really doesn't want to do it. And she tries to be like, tomorrow. I don't want to I want to prolong it a little. And Giselle's like, no, now. I'm like, oh, okay, damn. So they're like, okie doke, they're gonna go through the woods. They're getting there, and she's like, I have to perform the spell, and she's telling her to like repeat the ridiculous phrases. And she's like, by nightshades touch an obsidian's edge. And Giselle's like, really? I agree. And Giselle actually starts asking some good questions, like, how long has it been since you brought me here? Like, how does time look? And she's like, time in this realm does not flow as you know it. It's been but a moment and an eternity. And she's like, okay, that's bullshit. Like, you have to give me something. Like, has it been days, weeks? Like, how long has it been? And she's like, I don't know. And she's just like, okay, your cryptic answer that you did give is not an answer. And she's just like, okay, we have to continue with the spell. She's like, if I finish the spell, I'll get back to my world. And she's like, yeah, this is what you wanted. She's like, what if I change my mind? She's like, what if I want to come back? How can I do that? And she's like, once you leave, the path will be sealed. Like, the spell is limited for a reason. And Giselle gets rightfully angry. Is like, you should have told me this before I agreed to it. Like, you lied to get me here. I did, Giselle, and I'm sorry.
You lied to me.
I did.
You poisoned me. You told me you loved me.
I do.
Anyway, they continue with the spell, and she gets pulled under the water, and she really doesn't want to allow her to leave because she's kind of disgusting. But don't worry, it didn't really work because Giselle was like, actually, you know what? I don't want to leave. She comes up coughing, spluttering, gasping for air, and she's like, when the water pulled me under, everything felt wrong. Everything but you. She's just like, looks like I'm stuck here. The magic of the spell had bound her to this realm to me. She had accepted it. That was the proof. So it's about the cut on her hand, which is really dumb. Like, why would we phrase it all this way? This is so stupid. But she's like, stay with me. And she's like, that's what I'm doing, isn't it? I agree. Like, aren't you gonna miss your world? Aren't you gonna miss your life? Which is a question we should have been asking earlier instead of 98% in. No, she finally admitted that life wasn't truly mine. The only time I felt alive was when I was at the fair. That was the real me, Giselle continued. I was hiding in a dull office job pretending to be someone else because what else was I going to do? So we finally learned what kind of job vaguely she had. Hooray. 98% of the way through. Hooray. She's like, with you, I can finally be myself. And she's like, oh, Giselle. I don't know why you think that, but all right. And she's like, then let's make this your home. And she's just like, we have a celebration to attend. Like, aren't they going to be frantic about their queen being missing? And she's like, let them be frantic. I'm like, I think that's a bad idea after all the assassination attempts, but I don't know anything, apparently. She's like, and I have my champion. I'm perfectly safe. And then that just devolves into not kissing, Jesus. That devolves into sex. I'm not gonna go over it because I don't care. And I have to leave for work very soon. Anyway, she has her mortal champion and now she's truly hers. The end. Conclusion. This book had some serious promise. I thought the beginning was interesting. I liked the idea of it. I also liked the idea of her kind of being enchanted into following her. I liked the kind of fae trickery. I liked the idea of a murder mystery plot. But what did I get? I got zero good court intrigue. I got one-dimensional so-called evil characters who actually didn't even have anything really to do with any of the murder. It didn't make any goddamn sense. And it was full of smut, which would have been fine if the rest of it had been solid. This book was not for me, and I really wanted it to be. I really wanted it to be. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. That's the most it could get from me, unfortunately. What did you guys think of this book? Leave, I don't know, like a little fairy in the comments or something, or a sword. I don't care if you made it this far, so I know that you're watching all the way. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!